It is primary election day in Maryland, and the polls just closed. Thank you for streaming our special coverage on WUSA 9, your election headquarters. I'm Leslie Foster.
I'm Lorenzo Hall. So the results tonight will help shape Maryland's political future, setting the stage for the general election in November. Now, there are dozens of statewide, federal, and local races on the ballot.
Voters are choosing their party's nominees for governor, state senate, delegate seats, all 8 of Maryland's seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, as well as the county executive and county council races and several board of election positions.
Yeah, so we are expecting tonight to move much faster than D.C.'s primary and special election last week.
Right.
You know, that dragged on forever, right? We didn't see our first results in that election until nearly 11 p.m., about 3 hours after the polls closed, all because of ranked choice voting.
Yeah, this will be a different night. Maryland did not use that style of voting. Instead, voters chose one person per race, with exceptions for some at-large county council seats and some board of election positions. There was also a week of in-person early voting and mail-in ballots that election workers can start tallying up right now.
All right, so Maryland's Board of Elections says that means we could see results within the next 15 to 30 minutes. Our team is spread out around the state tonight, monitoring those results as they come in.
But we also have an expert panel to help us analyze some of the biggest races. Michael Fauntleroy is a professor of policy and government at the Schar School at George Mason University.
Yeah, we also have Candace Torito, a senior lecturer of government and politics at the University of Maryland. Thank you both for being here. Should be a fun night.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get some quality bonding time here, right?
All right. Our special coverage of Maryland's primary election starts right now.
And we start with the biggest races we're following. Longtime Representative Steny Hoyer is retiring from his 5th congressional district seat after 45 years, and a whopping 27 people are running to replace him, 24 Democrats and 3 Republicans.
Wow, and Representative Hoyer has endorsed his former aide, Adrian Boafo, to take over that position. Other big names in the race include former Prince George's County Executive and House of Delegates member Rashawn Baker III, current at-large Prince George's County Council member Walla Blagay, and former U.S. Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn, who was attacked on January 6th. Now, we should point out this seat covers parts of Prince George's, Anne Arundel, Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's counties.
And the 6th district race has become one of the most expensive, not just in the state, but in the nation. There are 2 standout names among the 8 candidates. Incumbent April McClain Delaney, who is chasing a second term, and David Trone, who held this office from 2019 to 2025 when he gave it up to run for Senate. This district covers part of Montgomery, Frederick, Allegheny, Garrett, and Washington counties.
Now, Mark Eldridge has reached the end of his term limit in Montgomery County, so voters are choosing a new county executive. Candidates Will Jawando and Evan Glass gave up their at-large council seats to make this run. Now, there are 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans in the running. Since Eldridge can't run again, he's on the ballot to serve as an at-large county council member instead.
Yeah, Prince George's County is also choosing a new county executive. There are 5 Democrats running, including Aisha Brayboy, who is running for a second term. No Republicans are running in the primary.
And we're keeping a close eye on the Montgomery County Board of Education race. So voters are choosing 2 new at-large members. These seats are open because Carla Silvestri and Julie Yang are running for council offices, so a lot of movement here. Voters will also choose 2 Board of Education members to represent District 3. This covers dozens of schools in Bethesda, Chevy Chase, Kensington, and Potomac. The Board of Education has taken a lot of heat lately, as you know, because of how budget cuts are impacting public schools. Montgomery County is home to the largest school district in Maryland.
And one other race we'll be watching is in the state Senate seat in District 46. Currently held by the state Senate President Bill Ferguson, who is running again. But he has faced some criticism from his own party because of his push to stop redistricting efforts in Maryland. Some experts believe that stance cost him an endorsement from Governor Wes Moore, who's also running for re-election. He faces only one other Democrat, Eric Elber, a physician and medical clinic owner. 9 Republicans all want this opportunity for their party's nomination, including Dan Cox, who you'll remember lost to Moore in the last election. Now, we know at least one polling place is being impacted by a major road closure. This has been going on for hours now. This is a live look at police activity that has shut down the ramp for Route 50, leading to a polling place at Mount Calvary Baptist Church.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be cleared up by now,
Sure.
but not so much. Drivers on the northbound I-495 can take exit 20A to Route 450 and then turn right onto Whitfield Chapel Road. Another option is to take Route 704 east, turn left onto Annapolis Road, then left onto Whitfield Chapel Road. It's important to note, though, you can cast a provisional ballot at the Prince George's County Board of Elections office in Largo because, yeah, if you're not there now, it's too late, right?
Right.
So, yeah, we have a crew on the way to that scene right now. We'll bring you that scene as soon as they arrive. All right, but in the meantime, let's get to the crowded race to replace retiring Congressman Steny Hoyer. He has represented the 5th Congressional District for 45 years. 27 people, 27 are in the running to try and replace him.
It's amazing. They had to put 27 names on a ballot for people to go through.
That's one sheet.
That might be 2 sheets. Randy Hildreth is at the IBEW Local 26 headquarters in Lanham with Adrian Boafo's campaign. He is a former aide to Hoyer and was endorsed by the representative. So how are things going there right now? What's the tone? What are people feeling?
Yeah, good evening to you both. Well, things are just really getting started here. I had a chance to talk with Boafo as they were wrapping up setup. Spoke to him briefly. He seemed calm but excited, said he plans to sleep well tonight no matter how things pan out. I also had a chance to talk with his campaign team. They say that he started early today voting and then hit a couple of campaign locations to do that last little bit of campaigning before the polls close. And they say he also spent today reflecting about what this moment means, talking a little bit about the fact that he is the son of immigrant parents, saying that his parents came here from Ghana. Now, as you mentioned, this is a very crowded field. He is facing more than 20 opponents on the Democratic side, and he has had to work to separate himself from his opponents. As you talked about, the momentum behind his campaign, the big names that have endorsed him, Governor Wes Moore, also Representative Hoyer, and also talked about what that has meant for him as the campaign moved forward, to have those names, to have that momentum. He talked about, when I had a chance to speak with him last week in the last leg of his campaign, about the experience that he brings to the table. As you mentioned, Leslie, the fact that he has worked for Representative Hoyer. He served on Bowie's City Council and also serves as a delegate. And he says that experience combined gives him the ability to do what he feels like Maryland voters need, and that is to go toe-to-toe with President Donald Trump.
We need a new generation of leadership in Washington. I'm the youngest person in this race, but one of the ones with the most experience on taking on this president, on taking on a man-made affordability crisis, but more importantly, making sure that Maryland has representation in Washington that is going to wake up every single day, especially for our federal workers, and fight for them.
And in that conversation with him, he talked about his big key points in this race, one being affordability. Now, again, I talked with his campaign team to get the run of the show for this evening. He is expected to arrive back in place around 9 o'clock. Also said Representative Hoyer is expected to be here and speak to this crowded room of supporters. But for now, I'll send it back to you.
He was endorsed by a number of other political heavyweights there in Maryland, so we'll get to see if that made any sort of difference tonight.
Sure did. Whatever you can get when there are 27 people running for office can be beneficial, right?
Yeah.
How do you stand out? We'll see tonight. All right.
All right, we're checking in on candidate Harry Dunn's campaign event as well. As you know, he's part of the crowded race, or we were going to check in with them, but he's part of this crowded race as well, so it's worth pointing out.
Yeah, he sure is. So let's go to the 6th
Congressional District.
Yeah.
That's right. David Trone is running again. He owns Total Wine and More. As you know, Trump held this office before. He gave up the seat to run for Senate back in 2024.
Now, Trone, of course, is the owner of Total Wine and More. John Duran is joining us live from Trone's campaign event. This is at the Steinhardt Brewing Company in Frederick, Maryland. Sounds like there's some activity behind you, John. What's happening?
Yeah, Leslie, supporters starting to file in. Doors opened up right at 8 o'clock. You know, this has become one of the most expensive primaries in the country, with both Trone and McClain Delaney spending about $32 million of their own money. Trone himself has self-funded approximately $25 million in that total in his bid to regain the seat he vacated for a Senate run last election cycle. The former 3-term congressman and Total Wine and More co-owner is trying in the massive, diverse 6th district that spans parts of deep blue, suburban Montgomery County, and Democrat-leaning Frederick County to the more conservative rural western panhandle of this state. Trone and his opponent, McClain Delaney, have run several attack ads against one another during their campaigns. Trone's campaign has claimed McClain Delaney voted with Trump and MAGA Republicans 22% of the time. McClain Delaney disputes that framing and says She has the backing of Maryland's top Democratic leaders because of her work on issues Democrats care about. For Trone, he says the biggest issue tonight is who voters trust to take that fight back to Washington.
At stake is really fighting back against Donald Trump. I mean, we can't have a member of Congress that doesn't push back 100% of the time against Trump's initiatives that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. I've never lost a general because I cut across party lines, and folks respect the fact that you're a businessman, that you're self-made and created a company across the United States. And so we always get some independents like crazy.
And again, McClain Delaney pushed back in an interview with WUSA 9, pointing to support from Governor Wes Moore as well as Maryland's Democratic congressional delegation. She says support shows she's the candidate focused on lowering costs, protecting rights, and fighting the Trump agenda. Leslie, Lorenzo.
Yeah, well, this race is significant, not just because of who they represent and what they need, but how much money has been really invested in this race. I mean, this is not just big for our community. I mean, they've spent a lot of national funds here.
He spent a lot of money for that Senate race, and then coming into it this time around, April McClain Delaney decided to use millions of her own money too.
$7 million of her own money. Yeah, we'll be watching this one. And speaking of April McClain Delaney, she is running to keep her seat for another term.
Yeah, our Katie Lusso is at her campaign event at the Holiday Inn in Gaithersburg. Katie, what is it like there right now?
Yeah, and you know, the crowd has really started to get excited, and let me show you why, because Governor Wes Moore himself has just entered the room just moments ago. He is here with Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, and they are here to show their support to April McClain Delaney. You know, he has been very vocal that he is a supporter of hers. He was asked why he continues to support her and really gave her the endorsement, and he said she's a fighter, and he likes that about her. So, you know, he is not going to be speaking at this event from what we're hearing, but he is here to mingle. He's making several stops across Maryland to the different campaigning events. But, you know, he is here. He's showing his support, and he has been to several of her campaign events throughout the day, but also in the weeks that have passed. So let me tell you a little bit about April McClain Delaney. She is defending her seat in what many have called one of Maryland's most expensive and contentious political races. She is the incumbent here, and as I mentioned, she has received a lot of high-profile, big-name endorsements. Governor Wes Moore, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator Angela Alsobrooks, and Congressman Jamie Raskin. And she says that's important because it shows that Marylanders really stick together and Maryland leadership is working together. Now, a little bit about her personally. She is a Potomac resident, which, yes, is outside of District 6, but her opponent, David Trone, important to mention, also does not live in District 6, and that is not a requirement. She's also a mother of 4, an attorney, and at one point worked for the Department of Commerce. Her campaign, she told me earlier, focuses on what she calls common sense politics. She told me she has 3 big priorities here. She's fighting what she called an assault by the current administration on things like immigration, on women, the LGBT community, and she's also fighting for affordability. She says rising energy costs, housing, daycare, these are all things that she is going to be fighting for. In her words, continue fighting for. And she also wants to build trust in democracy, make sure there's not intimidation. You know, this has been a very contentious race. We have seen so many attack ads, and we have talked a lot about those attack ads. You know, this is an expensive race, as you heard John Duran mentioning, $32 million between the two of them, and a lot of that money was spent on those ads. She called those ads disappointing. She said that she really feels like this should not be the way Democrats are treating each other. I think it's also important to mention that at one point, her and David Trone were actually friendly. There are photos of them when they were, you know, when she was initially running the first time around. There's photos of them hugging. She called this really disappointing that it has turned to such a contentious campaign between the two of them. But you know, this is something she says she continues to lead with her heart. And she said that she actually, in her last campaign ad, she switched the narrative a little bit and decided she was going to move forward with kindness. She said it is upsetting and she's disappointed in the way that went, but she's going to continue to fight back and try to really fight for Maryland. Again, I want to go back to the fact that Governor Wes Moore is here. We are going to try to speak with him in a few moments, but he has been vocal about his support for her, and she has called that a really important moment. I know we've heard from David Trone where he has talked about not needing the endorsements of these other political leaders, but instead saying he has the endorsements of the people. Well, she says, again, that this just shows that they are a united front here in Maryland. So it'll be interesting to hear from him if we're able to talk to him in just a moment. And we'll play you some more of our interview with her a little bit later. But for now, let me send it back to you, Leslie and Lorenzo.
That Governor Moore knows how to draw a crowd of his own, right? So by showing up here to support McClain Delaney, it's been really interesting. We've been talking with our experts, and we'll get them in the conversation in just a moment too, of why the governor chose this particular candidate to show up for. And maybe he'll make the rounds later in the day, but this is one of the early appearances.
Yeah, also hearing that response from Trone as well, basically saying, I don't need the political establishment there to win this. I don't need your money either, clearly, but I can still make it happen. So a lot of folks they're waiting to see who's right, who comes out on top, huh? All right.
Yeah, we'll get back to that conversation in just a bit. But first, we have to tell you, there is one polling place that's being impacted by a major road closure this evening.
We told you about this moments ago. Police activity has closed the ramp for Route 50 that leads right to a polling place at Mount Calvary Baptist Church. Our Alexis Wainwright just arrived there right now. So, Alexis, how is this impacting the effort to vote?
Well, Lorenzo and Leslie, I can tell you there's a lot of concern. We have been hearing directly from voters, but also Prince George's County Police have been hearing concerns about people trying to get to this polling place. Now, we have the scene right here behind me, but to give you a better idea, take a look right here. Next to the scene is the polling site. This is Mount Calvary Church. This is where people are supposed to come to cast their ballots, but they're not able to because some of them still actively stuck on Route 50. Meanwhile, others can't even get on this street, Whitfield Chapel Road, to get to this church. You can see this backup of a couple of cars right here that were able to make it through and cut through, but you can see some of them are already turning around. Now let's set the scene for you. If you take a look further down here on Whitfield Chapel Road, you will notice Prince George's County Police actively out here. There are several law enforcement agencies. We have seen New Carrollton Police, we have seen Prince George's County Fire and ENS, and also just a block away from where we are, we see several other law enforcement agencies kind of gathering, talking as they continue to negotiate with a man who is actively on the bridge. Now, to better describe it for people who aren't familiar with this area, the road that we're on right now leads to a bridge that goes over Route 50. That is where police say this man is sitting on a fence on top of the bridge, and they're still trying to negotiate with him to get him off of the bridge. In the meantime, though, for the past 5 hours, this has been going on. People have been stuck in traffic. According to the Maryland State Highway Administration in their tweets on X, they have been actively trying to work this scene and trying to get people to avoid this area. But many people live in the neighborhoods right where we are standing at this hour. So people are trying to get home from work. Many of the people we have talked to live in this area and we're trying to go home, then come over here to the church to cast their ballots. Now, as you guys mentioned, the polls closed at 8 p.m. and we are well into almost 8:30 and people are still trying to get here. So a lot of things going on here. A lot of people are concerned and trying to come here to cast their ballots. But as you can imagine, many of the people still on Route 50 stuck in that traffic and not able to get here. So of course, we're going to stick here and continue to learn more about what exactly is happening here. A lot of the neighbors we have talked to said that they initially saw a man out there on the bridge, but they weren't sure what exactly was going on until they saw several police pulling over here to the scene and then backing people away from this area. But we also spoke with a woman who was on her way. She's still currently stuck on Route 50. Take a quick listen to what she has to say.
Because my voting place is just right down the street. I leave Bowie, I get on 50, and I'm on 50 for maybe a half a mile when brake lights. So I thought, oh man. So I pull my GPS up, and it tells me it's going to be an hour and 45 minutes for me to get home.
So again, you can just hear what's going through her mind. She's just one of the many voters that is stuck on Route 50 right now and just trying to get home and then come here to the polling site, which we know the polls have closed at 8 p.m. So a lot of concern and questions as far as what's next for those voters. But again, you can see the scene here still behind me. Negotiators still actively trying to get that man off that bridge. Of course, we'll stick here and update you as we learn more. But again, as you can imagine, a lot going on right here on this street on Whitfield Chapel Road because the church where where people would vote is right here next to where authorities have blocked the street off. So of course we'll stick here and update you as we learn more. But for now, we're reporting live in Prince George's County. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Yeah, a bit of a life or death situation here as they're trying to make sure that people are able to cast their votes and do their civic duty, but also trying to make sure that they save someone's life at the same time. So two very important things happening at the same time. Alexis, thank you for the context there.
All right, we have some news right now. The Associated Press is calling the race for Governor Wes Moore as the Democratic nominee for governor in Maryland.
That was pretty quick.
That was quick.
16 minutes after the polls closed. We
I don't
told
think that
you.
a lot of people are surprised, right?
Yeah, probably not. I think the sense was that Governor Moore was going to win this. The question will be what happens in the fall, what Republicans will do, who they'll put up to run against him. We're getting some other early vote totals coming into our newsroom as well.
Yeah, Matt Gregory, he's at the big board tonight. So Matt, update us.
All right, I mean, you just called it right there. I don't think Eric Felber's going to make up the 137,000 he is behind. That was kind of why the AP called that. But more importantly, we are getting also numbers so far from the Republican race. Now remember, there's fewer Republicans in the state of Maryland, so let's look at the governor's race. Way too early to call, but at this point, Dan Cox has a small lead over Ed Hale, but he's only separated by about 3,000 votes. But you can see in these kind of heated areas here, the support for Dan Cox coming mostly from the lower eastern shore and the further west portions of the state, which is what you'd expect. Those are deeply red areas. So you would expect Dan Cox, who has been kind of a cipher for the MAGA movement in America, or in Maryland, I should say. That's Cox's role. And then Ed Hale, who's the former Democrat and banker from Baltimore City, Baltimore County area. He looks like he's got his support that's kind of welling up where he's from, right? Baltimore County, Baltimore City, as well as it looks like here in Talbot County as well. So that's a little bit of what we're seeing in the Republican race. And again, that one is going to be a big one as we watch into November. Who wins this and challenges Governor Moore? How will the current state of economics play out? How will the energy bills that have been going through the roof in Maryland? How will all the economic uncertainty play out? Will we see either an Ed Hale or Dan Cox mount a serious challenge towards Governor Moore? Now, the one that I think is most interesting, and I want to get to it first, is like we said, District 5, where we have 24 Democrats running to replace Steny Hoyer early on with sort of only 29,000 votes, almost 30,000 coming in. Boafo has this small lead over Quincy Barebe and Harry Dunn. And when you kind of get the heat map on, you can see that his support is starting to come in from all four of the different counties. But when you look at each one, like let's take St. Mary's, for example, I mean, that's only 2,000 votes coming in at this point. So that's really not anything of substantial in terms of leads. And when you go up to Calvert County, same thing, right? 2,000. The biggest one we wanted to look at was Prince George's. They're only reporting about 13,000, but in each sort of area of the 5th District, we're seeing Boafo right now having a lead, but we'll see how that changes. Again, there are 24 over here running for this particular role. Now, back to the 6th, let's see how we're doing. McClain Delaney and Trone. Again, 16,000. There's many more. I think in this district, voter-wise, if my numbers are right, it's roughly in this area of like 100,000 registered voters that voted in the last primary or something like that. Let's just give it a check. All right, so it's 56,000 here and then 56,000 roughly in the Republican area. So, long story short, way too early to call, but you can see Delaney has a small lead, and we put the heat on. We'll see where the support's coming from. It looks like her support coming from over here in Garrett County and a little bit more in Frederick and in the portions of Montgomery County. So that kind of tells you, when we were doing an interview with her the other day, she was talking about the amount of time she spent in Allegheny and Garrett County this year, speaking with folks about the issues, the things that matter to them. So it's interesting to see her support there. We're going to go over to see who that challenger might be. It's perennial Republican Robin Ficker, who we've seen run for Senate, run for different congressional roles. He looks like right now in a very small, sample size, only up by 57 votes over Chris Burnett. So these are some of the races we're looking at, and numbers-wise, what we're going to see. I expect that over the next hour, we should get a better idea of what we're going to be seeing. I mean, that sounds obvious, but you never know. Finally, Raskin over here, that's has been called as well over here in his district, District 8. Not unexpected. He's a very popular incumbent. 92.9%. I'd say that's a pretty solid roll there. But yeah, we're going to keep looking at things on the board, folks, and get a better idea of just what direction Maryland's going in coming into November.
Getting those early returns in already. Glenn Ivey, 4th District. AP has called the race for him as well. And Ginny, you said there's some information in for District 3 as well?
For Johnny O?
Elrith wins that one as well.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. We'll be checking back in with you in a minute. Thank you, Matt. All right.
Well, let's bring in our panelists. They've been sitting here with us, hanging out, watching some things, listening to a lot, studying like it's a final exam. Both of
You guys can
you.
see all of that at home, right? You came ready, Candace.
Try to come prepared.
Mike, one of the things you were saying early on is you thought it was really fascinating that Governor Moore was at April McClain Delaney's election party.
At like 8:15 p.m., right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting for two reasons. One, he's running for re-election, and regardless of who he's running against, it would behoove him to do well in that district. So showing up at this event, to me, is symbolically important. He can go to any district in the state if he wanted to, or not go to any district. He can just stay in the governor's mansion. But he decided to do that. So that's one part that I find very interesting. And then secondly, it may well be the worst kept secret that he's seriously considering running for president in 2028. That district is adjacent to the state of Pennsylvania. So if you can make any hay in the northwest corner, the panhandle of Maryland, there may be some bleed over into the southwestern corner of Pennsylvania.
Now, the governor has said he's going to stay in this role if he's elected. Oh, look at your face. He says he has made a commitment. He says, I am going to fulfill this term if I am elected to serve the people of Maryland.
Okay, all right. I hear you, but presidential campaigns don't come up every 5 minutes. You can't run necessarily when you want to run. You have to run when the opportunity is there. And 2028 is going to be an open seat. Now, it may end up looking like, Maryland 5 with 24 different people running, right? But he's got as good a chance as anyone else, so he owes it to himself to at least think about it. And I get that he's saying what he's saying now, and I could see him saying 9 months from now, or right around Christmas, so I've had a change of heart, right? And I'm not necessarily knocking that. People have the right to change their minds. We expect candidates to be locked in on something very early. I know he said he intends to fulfill his seat. I'm sure he thinks he will, but I'm also not going to be surprised if he runs in 28.
Candace, you're shaking your head over here. I take it you agree.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to make some long-term promises in politics too far ahead of the game. So I tend to agree. There's a reason why some of the attention and some of the buzz has surrounded Wes Moore as one of the possible candidates to run a presidential campaign. There's a lot of room between now and when an exploratory committee might be established. And as we know, we kind of have a mess of a budget in the state right now. So there's a lot of stuff that still might change the game, change the landscape for him before he can make that decision. But certainly it's an available possibility at the moment. But it is also interesting for him to show up at April Delaney's, again, early tonight. But it may also be an indication, a little speculation here, that he has confidence in her winning. It also kind of depends on what his schedule is for the night. But I would be very surprised for a governor to put himself in the position of being at a losing election night party. Some votes need to come in yet, but and again, it is early, and he may bounce out and go to some other parties as well. But notable appearance.
What do you think? I mean, you look at what's happening here in the state of Maryland. You talked about the budget. Are you surprised that he didn't have a challenger this election cycle on the Democratic side, a serious contender?
Well, he almost did for a second, and then he just switched parties and went to the Republican ticket, right? So in Ed Ale. No, I'm not surprised. In a state that's as blue and as stridently blue as Maryland is, even with uphill battles, the machine that's behind Wes Moore, his ability to raise money, he's a charismatic guy with a good message that resonates. So it would be really difficult to defeat him in a primary when he kind of still, even though with some declining approval ratings, still has most of the steam behind him, and being able to hold on to that seat.
May I just add something quickly to that? The budget issue is a problem. We got that, right? But when you rank that among all the things that voters are thinking about, the state budget situation ranks below accountability, education, healthcare, housing, all those sorts of things. So even though that's a vulnerability for him, it may not be the kind of thing that a challenger could exploit in the universe of all the other things that candidates are thinking about.
Governor Moore has really positioned himself as someone who can really punch back against the president. He was a loud voice, not just amongst the National Governors Association, but just in the leadership ecosystem out there. He's been the one pushing this whole thing about redistricting in the state. That's been a big thing that he's talked about as well. How much of a factor is that likely to play in what happens in the state of Maryland going forward? It's not a kitchen table issue, but it's certainly something that people are talking about.
Yeah, so, it's easy to be loud in opposition to Trump in a state like Maryland, right? If he were governor of a different state, it might be a very different story. So I mention that here because that sort of basis, where you're coming from, helps give you a lot of latitude or less latitude in terms of what you can say to the president or about the president, and just sort of be a national figure. And I would also add that when you are in what I would consider to be a favorable position, you're able to speak some of the things that some of these other governors in some of these other states can't say, because the ecosystem doesn't really allow it. So I think what he's done in that regard is very helpful, it's very notable, and it may be the kind of thing that garners some attention for him or some support for him around the country should he choose to run.
Yeah, all right, so we know we have to get to the general election, of course, but let's say if Governor Moore does get another term, which more than likely he will, what does that look like the second time around?
So I think there are some uphill challenges again for him to face in the second term. We mentioned the budget. Another big one is infrastructure, namely the Key Bridge, which has turned into its own kind of mess. The original contract has been canceled. Now there's going to be 4 contracts awarded. The project is pushed, at least to project completion. I believe it's 2030 now. So that's a visible problem, right? Like people are seeing that every day, especially those around Baltimore City. So that's going to be, just infrastructure in general is going to be a challenge. And then, as Michael mentioned, housing, education. There are some other big policies that, depending on how Governor Moore frames this, and I would assume that he frames it in the most positive light. He gets to kind of tackle some of these problems over the next 4 years, but it will be very consequential however he tackles them. I think maybe especially for somebody like Aruna Miller, who if she decides to run in another 4 years, or if something, some opportunity presents itself for Westmore to move to a different level of office.
You talked about uphill battles for the governor and for the state. I mean, you have to talk about DOGE and the impact of all these federal jobs that were lost. Maryland took a hit probably more significant than any other part of the nation because of just the sheer concentration and numbers of federal workers who live in the state. Those people lose their jobs, that impacts the taxes, everything rolls downhill. You've got these budgets, the localities. This is a big picture problem for the state.
Just think about right across the line here in Montgomery County. All of these federal cuts have had cascading second and third order impacts that I think will be felt for years. And so the budget fight that people are talking about in Montgomery County, what is happening at the state level, all this stuff is residual. And so, you're talking about Westmore perhaps moving to a different level of government. Well, one reason to run is to get out of that, right?
Get that away from him?
So think about this for a second. And he was selected for this position. He didn't run for it. But when Mike Pence was tapped to be Donald Trump's running mate in 2016, he was a very unpopular governor facing re-election in Indiana. And he got plucked out of relative obscurity, put on the ticket, and became vice president. Now, I get that Governor Moore is different in terms of popularity, but that in 2026 might not look the same in 2027. And he may sort of be he may be encouraged to seek an alternative position because of what's going on in Maryland. He can always run around the country saying it was Trump's fault, right? So that's an easy retort when people say, well, you ran your state in the ground. Well, no, I didn't. I had to deal with this foolishness. And so I think, yes, this is having impacts all over the place, and these impacts will be felt in the district, Maryland, Virginia for years to come.
I mean, how does that impact him, though, moving forward? I think of what we see happening at the federal level, and how does Moore say, you know, this was caused by the Trump administration? Will voters accept that? How much blame would they put on him the second time around?
You know, it's hard to tell. I think when you get to some of the minutia and the details of policy and policy impacts, unfortunately or fortunately, voters tend to glaze over a little bit, right? We each have our lanes, right? It's part of the reason why society works, right? And so not everybody needs to know all of the things all of the time, right? And so it could be that some people kind of see through, and certainly maybe more the more sophisticated voters would kind of see through some of those things and challenge him. I'm sure an opponent would challenge him on those things. But given kind of the soundbite nature of where we are just in time, in politics, it's highly likely that at least he can offer an alternative narrative that doesn't feel as bad, and whether or not that involves directly blaming Trump, how Trump hits back, how that kind of interaction starts to go. A lot of that stuff I'm sure would be developed kind of as it occurs, you know.
So this won't just be a Wes Moore issue. When you hear all of these people who want these offices, everybody is hearing from their constituencies essentially the same thing. The energy bill is too high, the groceries are too high, the gas is too high. You know, people are really having to make some difficult decisions of their own with respect to their own budgets because of what's happening all across the country, but specifically here in Maryland.
Yeah, and I think as Michael was mentioning too, that budget issue that may be kind of obscure as a policy point, right, as a top issue to voters across the state, it is something that trickles down, right, and to the point where I think that voters really, when they can feel something in their own households, in their own pocketbooks, that's when people start to wake up and pay attention. And so that's definitely occurring now. It is a mix of state policy consequences, federal policy consequences, right? But everything is being felt at the household level right now. And so I think that voters are rightfully so looking for someone to hold accountable. And though they might miss the details of how exactly we got into a certain budget crisis or all of the details of options of how to get out of that budget crisis, I think it's pretty clear that they're looking for someone to take the reins and create a leadership kind of position to get us out of this mess. And it's going to be difficult. It's probably going to take a number of years, at least at the state level.
Yeah.
We're looking at a big deficit.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and would add that there is a sort of anger dimension to some of this. Because this is not part of a natural economic cycle where things go up and down. We understand that economics and economies move in cycles, right? What we're talking about right now is largely a policy-created phenomenon out of the White House. And for people who, to your earlier question, people will view a Wes Moore response in large measure through the prism of how they view the White House. And if you like the White House, you're not really going to accept Wes Moore's explanations on this. If you think that the White House is part of the problem, Wes Moore, if he stands up and says it's his fault, will get a lot of runway that he might not otherwise get as a governor if Maryland's economy turns in the wrong direction over the course of the next few months.
So let's talk about Dan Cox and Ed Held really quickly. I mean, we saw Dan Cox before, embracing MAGA. Does that still fly in Maryland when it doesn't work the first time? Do you keep up with that sort of campaign and that style?
Well, when every problem, when all you have is a problem, all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And he doesn't have a different card to play, so you just keep playing the same card hoping that you get a different result. And there's no reason to believe that it could work this time. I think there's less acceptance of that kind of politics and that kind of rhetoric and those kinds of ideas now than then. People are seeing for themselves that this isn't really working for most of them. And so I can't imagine why he'd do better a second time than he did the first. Yeah.
All right, we're going to continue this conversation, but we want to get back to our Alexis Wainwright, who's been following that road closure of Route 50. She's got some breaking news to share with us. Alexis, what can you tell us?
Well, Leslie, within the last minute or so, we heard from Prince George's County Police. They are confirming that the man who was up on the bridge in crisis has came down safely. Again, the man who was up on the bridge has come down safely. Police obviously have been working for several hours negotiating with that man who was up there. But you can see this large scene we're still seeing here on Whitfield Chapel Road. Obviously, Prince George's County Police here, we're seeing a lot of their cruisers starting to leave this area, but still a very active scene here. As you can imagine, the road is still blocked off on both ends of this road, so people should still avoid this area if possible. We also have seen New Carrollton Police out here, a SWAT team down the block also. So several agencies out here working together to kind of get a hold of what happened starting almost 6 hours ago earlier today. So a lot of people are happy to hear this news that this man was able to come down off the bridge safely, but also wanted to talk about the impact of this incident. We know that this polling site right here next to the scene, Mount Calvary Baptist Church, was a precinct for people to come and vote. I just spoke with the chief judge who works at this polling site. She confirmed with me that several of the voters were able to find an alternate route and get here. They saw about 170 people come and cast their ballots. But if you did compare that number to some of the other precincts we have seen today here in Prince George's County, that is a little low. But we also know several people who are still stuck on Route 50 right now because that is still currently closed. They weren't able to get here to cast their ballots. So still a lot of concern here. If you are one of those voters that wasn't able to make it here, we have been told by the judge that you should call the Maryland Board of Elections to report that you weren't able to make it here. No clue just yet what exactly that will mean for those voters, but obviously you need to speak up and let them know so they are aware that this impacted you directly. So again, a lot still happening here. We expect to see this road and Route 50 at some point reopen because that man has come down safely off of the bridge. But again, a very large scene here. We are still working to learn a lot more, but that is good news as we continue to follow this breaking news here in Prince George's County. So we'll send it back to you guys until we learn more.
Yeah. We'll be following up with the Maryland Board of Elections as well, just to figure out how they plan on handling this issue for voters. And glad that that man is okay. Kudos to the negotiators.
Absolutely. I know Mike was saying he wondered whether behind the scenes they might have been trying to negotiate something that would allow some voters to have an extended period of time to vote. That hasn't been communicated to us, so maybe they are just saying to contact the Maryland Board of Elections. What a tough day for a lot of folks today, but certainly for a family whose loved one has been able to at least be pulled from this part of crisis. That is the best part of the day. I think we're going to take a quick break, right?
The polls closed 42 minutes ago. Our coverage of Maryland's primary election continues in just a minute. Stay right here.
Thanks for sticking with us on WUSA 9 as we continue to watch closely as the results roll in from the key races that could reshape the future of Maryland.
All right, so here are just a few of the many races we are watching closely tonight. It has been called in the Democratic race for Maryland governor. We should point out, no surprise here, but incumbent Governor Wes Moore has secured the nomination, beating out opponent Eric Felber.
We are still watching closely as the votes are being counted for the Republican nominee for Maryland's governor's race, and we will watch that for you right now. Looks like Dan Cox is leading with 42% of the vote, but that is only with 1% of the precincts reporting here, so we'll keep an eye on that.
All right, right now let's get to the crowded race to replace retiring Congressman Steny Hoyer. As you know, he's represented that 5th congressional district for more than 4 decades. 27 people are in the running to replace him.
Can you name all 27
Oh my gosh.
people? What? That's a test, right? Randy, we're not going to put you to the test, but we know that you're at the IBEW Local 26 headquarters in Lanham with Adrian Boafo's campaign. He's obviously a former aide to Steny Hoyer, and Steny Hoyer endorsed him.
Yeah, good evening to you both. There is a lot of excitement and a lot of energy here between the time that I spoke with you earlier in the 8 o'clock hour to now. More people have arrived as I looked around the room. It's interesting. There is a wide range in terms of demographic here. We have older supporters, but then I look to my left and there is at least 2 tables of young supporters who say they are volunteers for this campaign. And so that gives you just a quick temperature check of the appeal that he has to some voters. I had a chance to talk with his campaign team, also had a chance to speak with him briefly when he was here as they were getting the last minute details sorted out and set up. There was a calm but a sense of excitement. As I mentioned earlier, he said however things pan out tonight, he will sleep soundly. His campaign team said he started the day early, went to a couple locations to do that last minute campaigning, and then also talked about reflecting on this moment, what it has meant to him to be at this point, considering that he is the son of immigrants. As I looked around, it looks like family is starting to arrive. His parents came to the U.S. from Ghana, and I could see people dressed wearing the flag of their home country. And as you mentioned, this is a very crowded field, and he has had to do a lot to separate himself from other candidates. And as you mentioned, he has had a lot of momentum, having the endorsement of Representative Hoyer, also getting the endorsement of Governor Wes Moore. And he says that that has meant a lot to him. He says in total, he's had 35 plus elected officials endorse his campaign. He says he's also gotten endorsements from local unions. And he says that one gives him momentum, but says that really shapes the outlook of his campaign. He says it starts early, potentially getting elected to this position. He has to build his network and community. In the last stretch of his campaign, I met him at one of the early voting sites, and he talked about his main focus, one being accountability. If he is elected, he plans to hold President Donald Trump accountable, but also said, and as you have mentioned in talking with the panelists, about how much affordability is important to people, and he says that is also a #1 priority for him.
Look, if you can't afford groceries, you can't afford rent. The president puts us in an unconstitutional war in Iran, and you can't afford gas prices. If you can't afford child care, if you can't afford a way of life, nothing else really matters to people. And in Maryland, people are feeling it harder and harder, especially because of what this president has done in our state. So affordability by far is the #1 thing. And then the second thing, honestly, is the accountability in Washington. Only people who are succeeding right now in America are cabinet officials and the president's family. And that's not fair to the American people.
And as I mentioned, and as you all have mentioned, he has the endorsement of Representative Hoyer. Representative Hoyer posted on social media earlier today, one, urging people to get out and vote, but also talked about a little bit more about why he endorsed Boafo, saying that Marylanders can count on him because of his track record. Now, the party, again, has already started, but we are expecting Representative Hoyer to be here and to speak. I'm also told, obviously, that Boafo is expected to address his supporters. We're looking at a 9 to 9:15 time frame, but we'll keep you updated. I'll send it back to you.
You know, he took a beating from his opponents during the last few weeks of this campaign as well.
There's been a lot of conversation about money, where that money is coming from, how much of it has been directed to him and where it's been coming from. We're going to dig into that part of the conversation up next.
Yeah.
All right, Randy, thank you.
All right, speaking of money here, the expensive race for the 6th Congressional District seat, David Trone, as you know, he's running again. He owns Total Wine and More. He held this office before and gave it up to run for Senate back in 2024.
John Duran is joining us live from Trone's campaign event at the Steinhardt Brewing Company in Frederick, Maryland. It was loud earlier. It's louder now.
Yeah, Leslie, you know, Randy and I, we're wearing the headphones now. That means people are showing up. The party's getting started. They're a little camera shy, though, because it looks pretty empty behind me. Let's just show you the other side of this room. Supporters are here in bunches. We have not seen David Trone yet. We are expecting to hear from him at some point tonight. April McClain Delaney, David Trone running for the 6th Congressional District, a district. Trone was a congressman for 3 straight terms before, as we said, leaving that seat for a Senate run in 2024. This is such a large geographic district, also politically diverse district, spanning parts of deep blue Montgomery County, Democrat-leading Frederick County, but also the rural, more conservative western panhandle of the state. Here are the early results right now. Like I said, about an 800 vote lead for April McClain Delaney right now. We caught up with David Trone at a polling location this afternoon and asked him, what's at stake tonight? He says, taking the fight to Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., fighting MAGA and President Trump policies. And we asked him, does he have a better shot at doing that than his opponent? Here's his answer.
Not as well as I would. I've never lost a general because I cut across party lines, and folks respect the fact that you're a businessman, that you're self-made, and created a company across the United States. And so we always get some independents like crazy. And that's one thing this system needs in Maryland is a primary system that's actually open so independents can actually vote, because they're totally disenfranchised, right now in Maryland. And that's wrong.
Yeah, and Leslie Lorenzo, off the top, you mentioned the money, because this has become one of the most expensive self-funded primaries in the country. Around $32 million spent out of April McClain Delaney and Trone's pockets combined. David Trone, as you mentioned, the co-owner of Total Wine and More, spending just about $25 million of his own money. A big story, a big storyline in this primary election for the 6th Congressional District. Leslie Lorenzo.
Well, those are big numbers.
Yeah. And we know his television ads started running early, right?
They started running early, and they just haven't stopped. It's been going and going and going. All right, well, lots of money, lots of conversation, and you mentioned, John, April McClain Delaney, so we're going to head on over to those headquarters because she obviously is running to keep her seat.
That's right. Her campaign event is at the Holiday Inn in Gaithersburg. And Katie, we know, based on the music there, they are still partying. They're pretty excited.
Yeah, and every time those numbers change up on the big board, there is a round of applause. We hear cheering from the crowd, so people are really excited. I do want to talk a little bit about what John was talking about with that money here, because as you know, this was an expensive primary race, possibly one of the most expensive that we've seen in quite a while, with David Trone obviously spending millions, as well as April McClain Delaney. She did spend significantly less, though, and I asked her about that specifically, talking about how much money David Trone really spent here, and he said that he spent that much to not have to take special money from anyone else. But April McClain Delaney, she was talking about how when you get that money donated to you, it's showing you that people support you. They want to invest in you. And she said that that is what her not using as much of her own money has shown through this process. But let's talk a little bit about April McClain Delaney. She is defending her seat in what many have called the most expensive, possibly most contentious race. We have seen a lot of negativity specifically between her and David Trone with those attack ads. A lot of the money they both spent went towards that. But a little about her, she's a Potomac resident, which Potomac is not in District 6, but you know what? Neither is David Trone. He does not live in District 6 either, and it is not a requirement for this position. She's a mother of 4. She has talked about that a lot. She's an attorney. She also at one point worked for the Department of Commerce, and she says her campaign is focused on what she calls common sense politics. She's showing up. She's listening to the voters and really honing in on what she says they want. Things like protecting federal workers, reproductive rights, women's rights, things like that. Now, I do want to talk about Wes Moore, Governor Wes Moore, because as you heard and saw, he was here. He stopped by. He's been showing his support for her at several of her campaign events. You see him there on the screen, meeting with people in the room. Now, she is not in the room, but you can see him there, just met by so many people. We're excited, and this was just moments before he won that Democratic primary seat. So this was even before he knew that he had the seat for the Democrats, and so many people in this room were excited to see him there. That right there on your screen, that's one of the women who work here in the hotel. So everyone was really excited to see him here. And when we've asked him about why he is supporting April McClain Delaney, he says because she is a fighter. And when I asked her what it felt like to have his endorsement, well, here's what she said. I asked her specifically how important it was to have that endorsement. Take a listen. You have the governor here today. How important was that for you to get that endorsement?
Incredibly important. I think Governor Moore and Dunn have been there every step of the way, have been really helpful. But also, you know, I have all the federal delegation, all the congressional House members and our 2 senators. But, you know, this Team Maryland, it's not just, we don't just talk about it, it's really a thing. We all row together, and we really row with our state and local partners, our county executives, our state delegates, our state senators. And this has been a time when we've really had to meet the moment, and I think when all of us are coming together, whether it's on hunger, whether it's on SNAP or Medicaid, but against all these rifts, it has been very helpful to have our governor's leadership who says we leave no one behind, because that really has truly been the ethos of all of Team Maryland.
And you can see there right behind her was County Executive Mark Elridge, whose seat is also up right now. But, you know, I want to talk about her priorities real quickly. She told me she has 3 big priorities. She is fighting for what she called an assault by the Trump administration. She said whether it's a fight for rights of immigrants, women, or the LGBT community. She said she's also planning to fight for SNAP and Medicaid and Medicare. So she called this a general fight against the assault on all rights. She also talked about affordability being a priority for her, about rising energy costs, housing, those sorts of things. And she also said her fight will be to gain trust in democracy, make sure there's not intimidation at the polls, and that there is trust in the leaders. So again, she has a lot of these big name endorsements, and I think we'll be finding out shortly how important those endorsements really were. Leslie and Lorenzo.
All right, the night is young. The party is high. The music is loud.
Yeah, it is. All right, Katie, thank you. All right, we want to go to another campaign event now. This one is for Aisha Braveboy at the Metro Points Hotel in New Carrollton. She is running for her first full term as Prince George's County Executive. As you know, this one was currently to finish out the term of Angela Alsop-Brooks, who is now a senator. Now, Aisha Braveboy has also served as the county state's attorney and as a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. Not much happening there yet.
Yeah, it's a lovely picture, though, right? This race isn't called yet, but right now we know that Braveboy has a strong lead, and by most accounts, this is her race to win. We'll see how this all pans out at the end of the night. All right, so Matt, Big Board Gregory has been keeping his eye on the early vote totals coming into our newsroom. He's chomping at the bit. He can't wait to get into them.
Yeah, you know, where we're seeing at this particular point, essentially, you know, we've been talking about, I want to go to District 5 first because this is the one that has the potential to the biggest changeover, right? Steny Hoyer, 45 years now. Who's going to replace him on the Democratic ticket? Well, theoretically, and just looking at it now, it looks like it may bear out this way. The person winning might not even have a majority, meaning 50% or more. Look at this. Right now, at this point, Adrian Boafo is in the lead. Again, early on, only 4% of the precincts reporting with 30% of the total vote, but he's got 32% to Quincy Berebe's 19.9%, so about 12%. But if you keep going down these double-digit totals, Harry Dunn is 14%, Rashern Baker is 10%, and Walla Blagay almost at 10%. So theoretically, whoever wins this could win with a very low, what we would perceive, vote total, but then they will have to roll that into the general election. And where's that looking for the Republican side? You're seeing Michelle Talkington and Chris Chafee. But the way I was kind of looking at this, and I don't know if anyone else is wonking out on this, but I'm very interested in it. You look at the heat, see where their support comes from. Michelle's comes from Prince George's County and portions over here of Charles County, whereas it looks like Chafee's support early on is coming from Anne Arundel, Calvert, and St. Mary's. So it's almost like a dividing line of Southern Maryland right there. Just little something interesting to talk about. Over to the governor's race, because this is the big one. Wes Moore is obviously going to move on into November. That was really never in question. But who will face him? This is the one where we're starting to see numbers come up, and it looks like Dan Cox again, who faced Moore in 2022, is in the lead by about 6%. And it's hard to know, you heard our experts talking about it, sort of how Ed Hale will play into this, because Ed Hale was a Democrat up until, this election cycle. So will he have support? It looks like the base of his support is coming from areas just right outside of Baltimore, which is fair. He was the CEO of First Mariner Bank for years. So you see his support there, whereas Cox's support is coming from your furthest west portions of the state and the east portions of the state, the Eastern Shore. So that's actually a pretty accurate breakdown of just how Trump has won as well across the state, which is you'll see high Trump support in the western portion of the state and over here in sort of the Eastern Shore area in terms of him. So, Cox being that, like I said, cipher for Trump, that's what you're seeing when you look at that. How is the Trone-McClain Delaney race going? Numbers are still preliminary and early. Like at this point, we only have about 16,000 votes in, and I want to show you how many we need to get to normal. We need to get to about 56,000. So that's about where we're at in terms of being able to call this race. It's just too close and too early. But, right now you're seeing McClain Delaney with 44%, about almost a 4 to 5% lead over David Trone. But that's only 800 votes or so. And that could be made up. We don't know how soon or how long that will take. The challenger in that, again, this is a district where if I like pulling up these totals just to give you an idea of what this could mean. It's about 49,000 was in the last race here. We're voting the Republican primary. So you saw 56, 49, give or take, that's actually about 6,000 vote differentials between the Democrats and the Republicans. So theoretically, right, the Republican who wins this race would have a pretty good shot against an April McClain Delaney or a David Trone. And so far in this race, looks like Robin Ficker and Chris Burnett are kind of neck and neck, separated by 57 votes. Ficker being kind of a perennial contender, running for many different offices across the state of Maryland and across this area in District 6 several times now. He once was kind of pushing to be running for governor against Hogan during that sort of era just before, I want to say it was 2018 or so. But yeah, so it's just fascinating to take a look at that. When we go over to 8, obviously Raskin is one here, and it looks like Glenn Ivey is also headed back to November as the representative for the Democrats in Congressional District 4. So that's what we're seeing so far. I'm sorry if that was a lot, and we'll keep kind of coming back to as the numbers come in. But, your big takeaways, small lead for Dan Cox right now in District 5. Who's going to replace Steny Hoyer? Boafo, early, slight lead. And then when we come over here to the Trone-McClain Delaney race, another tight race with McClain Delaney, the incumbent, sort of having the early lead. But we'll have to stay on top of it. It's a horse race at this point, and we'll get a better idea, I'm sure, as we get closer to about 9:30 or so of how these races are shaking out. Guys?
Okay.
Exciting to see how it's all coming in.
All right, let's bring in our experts that Matt mentioned moments ago, Candace Rito and Michael Fontroy. Let's keep talking about this District 6 race here with McClain Delaney and David Trone. Just to get your take on what we're seeing play out here. You're talking about these candidates spending millions and millions of their own dollars. How did it get so nasty?
There can only be one winner. It's as simple as that.
Is it a fight to the finish,
yeah,
right?
I mean, it's almost like the Hunger Games, right? So they are, these are two very successful people when we sort of measure it by material terms. They're both very wealthy people who aren't used to losing, who are always winning, so to speak. But in this case, you can only have one winner. And I have to say, I took note of something that April McClain Delaney said, that she wanted to fight for democracy, right? And I don't doubt her when she says that. I don't dispute it. I do think it's a little curious, though, when you're willing to spend millions of dollars to win a race that, in some respects, runs counter to the idea of democracy, where people are able to assess candidates and then make a decision based on their interest and what they think is best for the community overall. And for me, at least, the just overwhelming amount of money undermines that to some
from both candidates?
From both candidates. No, and by the way, not just in this race, but across the country. And in this case, we're talking about candidates who spent their own money. Right. Last week in DC, we were talking about outside groups spending money to target candidates. And so I have a concern about the excessive impact money has on our elections. And I just find it curious that somebody who's spending millions is expressing concern about democracy.
Well, I guess money talks, right? And in this case, with these ads, it
Yeah.
is not a good story. I mean, everything is negative.
Yeah. I think I'm one of the few people, because I just enjoy intellectually studying negative ads. You know, I'll be sad to see these go. I've been interested to see them come through.
Oh, this is a sad
Well,
night
we
for
can
you.
Yeah, I
We'll
know.
just play some back
Thank
for you.
you.
that
I
you can
appreciate that.
They're on
revisit the
YouTube.
best
You can find
Yeah,
them.
plenty.
I know. I'm sure that you'll all just give them all to me. Nobody will miss them but me. But you know, something that Michael said is funny, and I noted before we started tonight that one of the smaller, maybe more process issues of the campaign, because there's kind of policy issues up for discussion. I think those have unfortunately largely gotten lost in the sauce in Congressional 6, and a lot of it has been focused on the process. But one of the things that they have kind of been snipping at each other about is who has the most grassroots support, which is sort of hilarious when you're talking about two multimillionaires who are self-funding. But
And neither of them live in the district.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is really fascinating.
wild?
That for all of these years, in recent years, there's been a Delaney or a Trone in the office, and neither of them live
Constitution
in the
doesn't
district
require it.
that they represent.
Right.
I wonder if the voters actually know that. Do they know that these two people who say they're the best people to represent them in District 6 don't even live there?
I don't think it's probably very likely. It's not something that they're going to talk about and advertise a whole lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a little wild, but not required by the Constitution.
You
Yeah.
were saying that this is not unusual.
It's not unusual. There are other states around the country that operate in this way. Florida is a famous example. It does call the question though, like, do you really know the district if you don't live in it? Now, having said that, these are people running to serve in the House of Representatives, and the members in the House and the members of the Senate are effectively the board of directors of the world's most powerful corporation, the United States government, right?
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily vote just on things that impact your constituents. Every vote you cast has impact across the country. So I think there's an intellectual argument that can be made around not living in the district not being a problem, if I could put it that way. But I do think that there are some real questions to be asked about how much can you really be committed to a community that you don't live in. And there's a sort of extension to that, and that is folks who move into a district just to run, or move into a state just to run. We heard some of this when Hillary Clinton ran for the U.S. Senate in New York. You know, so that's also a part that has to be addressed. But I don't think most voters in that district know that neither of them live there.
Well, they've never said it. They
Right.
never
Yeah.
said,
And even if
we're
they-
of you, we're from you, we know what it's like. They've never said that in those ads.
Right. They're just fighting with each other over who has more of those supporters. And honestly, if it comes down to it, I think even if voters did know, I'm not sure that it makes much of a difference, because both of your primary choices here are equal on that matter, right? So there's not a whole lot of daylight to be, or contrast to be drawn between those two. If it was just one of them that was outside, maybe that would be a little bit more of a story. But you know, it's unfortunately, it's just it's a little loud with the negative ads. Again, we're focusing a little bit; those are focusing a little bit more on process than policy. But something we also talked about earlier was, especially maybe in Congressional District 5, we've been talking about the power or lack thereof of third-party spending of PAC money, right? And just there's growing kind of an anti-sentiment in Maryland against candidates accepting PAC money. There are several candidates that we'll talk about tonight that have refused it and made a big kind of public gesture of refusing PAC money. If you are one of those voters to whom something like that is important, right? That you think PAC money influences candidates too much and it shouldn't be involved in elections. There are a couple of different options for ways that candidates can raise money. One of them is to self-fund, right? And so we've got two multi-millionaires here who are self-funding. And so it'll be very interesting to see which of these comes out on top, if it kind of even matters in the days and weeks that follow the election. But certainly, as we've talked about, David Trone is spending a lot of money. This race there was a very expensive race in Kentucky early last month. This one is poised to become either the most expensive congressional primary like in history, or maybe second place.
Now, is that because of David Trone? Because he is spending so much of his own money? Is that why we're here? Because I think about that district and why is...
It's all about the candidates spending their own money. You're referring to the Tom Massey race in Kentucky last month. That had a ton of money in it, but it almost all came from outside the district. And so that's sort of a very interesting juxtaposition in the ways in which money, either internally from a candidate or externally from an outside organization or series of outside organizations, can really help impact what goes on in a race.
You all have studied where the money goes, where the money's come from, but also the messaging. We see and we can feel all of these ads that seem to have a negative bent coming in. Are they negative because they work?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, is that what it is?
Even if they all sound alike?
Yeah, so there's tons of research on this. This has been put to bed a long time ago. Candidates run negative ads because they work. And going positive is great sort of theoretically, but practically doesn't drive voters. Voters vote because they're agitated about something, whether it's their own economy or they hate one of the candidates or whatever the issue may be.
So they don't vote because they like somebody?
No. The two primary emotions here at work, if you're running a positive ad, you're trying to make voters feel, generally speaking, enthusiastic, right? I've made the right choice. I'm supporting this person. They're doing a good job. Hooray for me being so discerning in the right way. A negative ad is meant to jolt voters out of that comfort, right? There's only a real motivation to act and specifically to change your behavior. Right, so to change your support from maybe no candidate to some candidate or from this candidate to that candidate. If I have a reason to suspect that my existing choice is incorrect or is bad for me or puts me in danger, the larger, easier way to say that is to be a little bit scary, right?
Does that backfire? I think of this race in D.C. recently where it got negative toward the end, and you heard from some voters saying, "Oh, this person got too negative."
Well, certainly,
I don't like that.
Yeah, and certainly not all ads are created equal, right?
Okay.
Just because an ad is a negative ad doesn't mean that it will work. It has to be well produced. It has to. There's a lot of pieces that go into it. And if you imagine if the attacks are baseless, then that will land differently than if the attacks are well documented and can pick up steam in other kind of modes and hit voters on the radio or from their friends and family, right? And so not every message is equal. Generally speaking, on average, negative ads tend to be more heavily cited, like even if it's just the bill that someone is saying so-and-so voted this way, right? That seems so there's often that viewers actually see negative ads as more informative, even though their intention is to make those voters feel discomfort. In a general sense.
And one additional point. Sometimes the goal of these negative ads is to demoralize voters, to keep them from actually showing up. Because, you know, if I'm running a campaign and I know that I don't really have what it takes to win, I may want to try to dirty up the opponent so that the opponent's voters stay home. And so the negative campaigning piece, it's corrosive. It's not useful, it doesn't bring out the best in us, and at the same time works better than almost anything.
So it's here to stay is what we're hearing you say.
Well, look, I teach a course on the presidency and can show you ads from 200 years ago, literally, in which they were saying far worse things about each other than what we're hearing right now.
So it sounds like there's no more when they go low, we go high.
No,
anymore. It's when you go low, we're going down in the gutter.
I got a bulldozer here. We're going to go below you.
Well, and theoretically, there is a way to be nice about a negative ad. There is a way to make a civil attack.
There was one ad I remember for Montgomery County executives where they said something like, well, they're all nice guys, but where they're all good Democrats.
I think you mean Friedson, right?
But there was
good
only
Democrats,
one,
right?
But there was only one I can
think
of.
She remembers it.
Right, right.
No, but that wasn't. That was the nice nasty. I think.
Yeah.
And there's some research on this that the civility of the attack. So maybe a non-civil attack would be if I add a choice adjective when I'm describing you, and I call you a corrupt incumbent or an entrenched incumbent, right? Those adjectives start to add a little bit more of a personal interesting, but there is a way to attack a record and a platform or a perspective in politics or on governance and not use those uncivil words and that uncivil language. Perhaps that works a little bit better and kind of targets the attack a little bit more. But generally speaking, that doesn't, negative ads working is kind of the larger message. Whether someone is nice within that negative attack, that's going to still vary from a campaign to another campaign and kind of the gut of the candidate.
I thought it was interesting. Our Matt Gregory spoke with McClain Delaney and Trone in the final days before today, and they both pointed the finger at the other.
Yeah.
He attacked me first.
Yeah.
She put out the first negative ad. So clearly, they're trying to defend themselves against the negative ads.
We're at the point where America is celebrating 250 years. You have both studied this. You've been teaching students about things that happened hundreds of years ago. Have we moved forward at all in 250 years in terms of how these ads are generated and how we process them? Or have we sort of just turned back the clock in some ways?
This is a very interesting question because I can cite examples of presidential campaigns in which they said the nastiest things about each other, things that would not be acceptable in ads now. Right?
Really?
And so I wonder, I think that these ads are bad. There's not much of a lane for them to get better because these bad, negative, nasty ads work. But we've actually seen worse.
We've seen worse. Okay.
That's sobering.
Yeah.
Professor.
This race really quickly between Trone and McClain Delaney, do you think it hurts or helps Democrats nationally? I just think we talk about the affordability issue, we relate to you, we're in the struggle with you, but yet you have these millionaires who are just duking it out in this district, a district they don't live in.
Look, I think a year from now, most folks will have forgotten whoever loses this race.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure that's going to be an issue. And oh, by the way, to your point earlier, there are multimillionaires on both sides running for office all across the country, which says a little bit about the makeup of our Congress and who they're really going to represent. And that's a conversation for another time. The U.S. House of Representatives, as a percentage, has more millionaires now than it's ever had, right? And that's going to impact policy. So I don't think it's going to matter much nationwide because there are plenty of millionaires running, and I don't mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, there's a lot to talk about. Yeah. Hey, since we're talking about money, District 5, the conversation has been mostly about just how vast that race is and how many people who are seeking the office. And we've talked about money coming from in and out. How do you stand out in a race like that where there are 27 people seeking the same role?
You rely on endorsements. So we saw the clip earlier, and there's been a lot of talk about who's endorsing whom. And this is really interesting because I think you can make the case that endorsements don't have the same value that they used to. But in a race like this, where you have all these folks running and you could potentially win this race with 30, 32, 33% of the vote, right? So when voters go to cast their ballots, the fact that the outgoing member who's still very popular endorsed may make a difference. And so I think that's probably the best way to go, particularly when you don't have tons of money to run the kind of ads that can give you the name recognition that can help get you across the line.
I think name recognition is really everything in this particular case.
And in addition, that certainly helps with like the Steny Hoyer endorsement. I said Hoyer endorsement. I've been saying that the last couple of days, I've noticed. But that really kind of changed the dynamics of the race when that happened, right? And so in addition to endorsements, obviously money, but it can be kind of an outfall result of the endorsement. But I think also in a crowded field and in a primary, it's extra tricky.
Yeah.
Message discipline is also, I think, the stronger it is, the more you can rely on that to create some daylight between yourself and the 20 other people that are in the race with you. Again, it's harder to do in a primary because most people already start at a broader level of agreement, right? We're in the same party, we believe in the same platform, generally speaking.
Yeah.
We might have different priorities, but the trick here, and I think what adds to that primary difficulty, is that when you have this many people, if and of all of the issues that we've talked about that are important in this race, there's a lot to choose from. Message discipline doesn't mean talking about everything. It means talking about the top 3 things over and over and over and over again. And when one of your 4 million opponents says something on one of those other issues, if you are reacting to that, you're not practicing message discipline, right? So it can be really tricky, and you can have every instinct in your body saying, oh, I've got to react, I've got to say something about that because somebody else did. But I think that distracts from the message that you just want to punch home over and over again. Especially, again, with that many people in the race, you have to be heard and heard and heard in order for people to actually hear you. It's a repetition.
Is this a race worth studying with 27 people running? I mean, can we think of a time when there have been this many people running for one office? I mean, of course, Steny Hoyer was in office for 45 years, so
Right.
as you say, there's a lot of pent-up
There's
demand, right?
There's pent-up ambition, right?
Yeah.
There are tons of people that have wanted to run, and the truth is, the winner of this seat, because of incumbency sort of strength, might be in the seat for a while. So I understand why you got, 75,000 people running for this race, right? But I do think that if whomever it is that comes out ahead will have done so in part because of the discipline, and if it turns out to be Adrian Boafo, I think the fact that Steny Hoyer, not just leaving in a cloud, not just sort of slinking off into the sunset, but leaving as a revered statesman in the state, I think will prove to be a really big difference maker.
But how did we end up with so many in this race? Why do you think they all want this particular role?
It's harder and harder to get elected to Congress these days. I mean, if you're looking at the money that's spent among the candidates we're discussing tonight, like I find myself kind of internally saying, oh, that person doesn't have that much of a shot. Too bad they didn't raise more than $500,000 to be competitive, right, in a congressional race. And the demographics, especially of Congressional District 5, which is going to go Democrat, right? Congressional District 6, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there, maybe for a Republican. I don't know if it's going to happen this fall, but this is your one shot, right? And this is a powerful seat considering the constituency that backs it, right? Heavily Democratic, reliable seat over time. So if you want any sort of influence, and you don't want to have to travel far to get there. I mean, it's PG County. We're right there.
Yeah.
So it's a highly attainable kind of goal.
I hear you talk about money. I hear you talk about power. Is anybody serving to help people?
Oh gosh.
Well, they will say they are serving people, which gets us to one of the issues I'd hope we'd be able to talk about, and that is, if you pay close attention to the ads and to the candidates, so many of them are talking about fighting Trump, taking on Trump, right? But that doesn't necessarily lower costs anywhere. Right. That doesn't make it easier for me to put gas in my car or get my kids educated or make sure I have health care or can save for retirement and that sort of thing. And for that reason, I think some of these candidates are going to overplay their hand. Now, I would also say in their defense, to your earlier point, talking about policy in ways that actually makes sense is difficult. It's a very hard thing to do because voters aren't voting. Remember we were talking about negative campaigning. They're not voting necessarily on policy.
You can't feel the policy.
Right.
You can't feel it.
Hillary Clinton tried that, right? Didn't she? She was just listing all of her accomplishments, what she would do, and I feel like voters
Elizabeth
tuned out.
Warren. I think that's a big issue. That's a big problem, which helps explain why so many of the ads look the same.
Okay. Well, the night's still young, okay? We're still waiting for some of those results to come in. Our Matt Gregory's at the big board. Our coverage of Maryland's primaries continue in just a moment. Our extended coverage of the Maryland primaries continues now. Thank you for sticking with us as we watch results from key races roll in tonight.
Yeah, check out this really close race for Montgomery County Executive. Here's some numbers here. Will Jawando and Andrew Friedson are neck and neck. About 100 votes separate the two of them at this moment. So both of their campaigns are on the edge of their seats right now. We've got a crew working their way into Will Jawando's campaign event, and we'll check in with them in a little bit.
Wow. Still can't get over this right
Isn't
here.
that amazing?
That is close,
Yeah.
All right, and the AP is calling the race for Prince George's County Executive. Aisha Braveboy, you can see right there with 18% of the votes in. She is well ahead with 71% of the votes. You saw that live shot from her campaign rally moments ago. We'll check back with them in just a moment. All right, New York is also holding primary elections tonight. AP has called Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as the projected winner of the Democratic nomination for the U.S. House seat in New York's 14th congressional district. That means she would keep her seat. All right, let's get to our Eric Flack now.
Yeah, he is with Will Jawando at his election night party, I believe.
The Citizens and Culture Restaurant.
Okay,
Silver
perfect.
Spring.
Good to know the name of that. Flack,
That's right.
You're there, you're in the middle of it, and you probably heard us say that Will Jawando and Andrew Friedson are neck and neck, just 100 votes separating them right now.
Yeah, Leslie, people inside the room are following along on their phones just like you all are following along with those same results. And it just has the feeling of one of those races that we could be sticking with for a while tonight. You know, this is a race that Will Jawando told me earlier this afternoon really could shape Montgomery County for the next 10 to 15 years. Will Jawando, Andrew Friedson, both council members here in Montgomery County, both have been critical to the leadership of this county, and both of them expected a very, very tight race tonight, and that looks like what they are getting. Will Jawando told me his grassroots campaign had him feeling confident. He said they knocked on 50,000 doors, had 4,000 small donors. He said that's the type of grassroots support you really want in a campaign like this and a close race like this. He said the first line of his speech tonight was going to be, "Look what we did." And he said that was going to be the first line of his speech regardless of the outcome, believing that they had the grassroots support to win, but also understanding that this race was very, very tight. As for Andrew Friedson, he also says they were working the different campaign and polling places across Montgomery County down to the wire. He said his own mom was working a 13-hour shift at one of those polling places, trying to convince voters who were undecided to come over to their side, knowing that every vote really was going to count in this election. He expects a close election. He says this election is critical to the future of Montgomery County. His campaign starting 1 year and 1 day ago. He believes that tonight it will end up being a victorious campaign, but really both candidates hours ago when I spoke to them knew that we could be in this position where we are right now. But honestly, guys, so close. You're talking about hundreds of votes with a significant amount of those votes already having been counted. So many votes still to count. They both said it's those election day votes, the people who walked into those polling places we were at today and cast their ballots, that could end up being the difference in what could be a historically close race for the leadership of Montgomery County. A critical election here in Montgomery County, guys.
Critical election. We know that this role was term limited, which is why Mark Elrich was not able to run for a third time. And so then everybody got into this race, and then everybody's running for council roles as well. But boy, as you say, they clearly knew that this was going to be a very tight night and one to watch. And it is playing out just as they thought.
Yeah, that's right. If we could bring in our experts right now, because we want to talk about this one a bit more. We knew that this was going to be a close race, but this close? This early? Are we surprised at all?
I am not super surprised, but
Okay.
it's still early.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out that if either of the candidates who now have 37% of the vote win, let's say they win with 37, 38%, that still means more than 60% of the voters said they wanted somebody else.
Right. Right.
And one of the things, now this is not the kind of thing that's going to impact a general election because in Montgomery County it tends to be blue, but it is the kind of thing that I think a nominee will have to be cognizant of. Yes, you won, but don't act like it was a mandate because 60% of the people said they didn't want you. And so I hope that whoever wins comes out of this with an olive branch toward the other candidates who were in the race, because you're going to need those voters in November.
What separates, these candidates? A lot of them are alike. They've been on the council since 2018. A lot of the problems that the county's dealing with right now.
Yeah, they've been there for those problems.
In many ways, they've been responsible for
that. That's true.
That's a fair argument. Yeah, all of the kind of top three, Evan Glass, Will Jawando, and Andrew Friedson, all were elected to the Montgomery County Council in the same year. Two of those are at-large councilmen, and I think Friedson is District 1, but they're all in their 40s. They all are obviously Democrats to varying degrees on the progressive kind of definition. But looking into some of the details of their platforms, their priorities, between the three of them, gosh, if you ask them a question about affordable housing or education, in almost every instance, you get two of them that agree with each other, and a third one who's just a little bit off to the side with a little bit of an extra, punch. And then you got another question, and that pair that agrees changes, but there always seems to be a pair of them that agree on something. So it is, again, generally difficult to find some daylight in primary candidates sometimes. This actually has me thinking tonight. We were talking a little bit earlier about how long it takes to count ranked choice votes.
Yeah.
But, there's an argument to be made that a race like this, is maybe the kind of race where ranked choice voting could make a difference. But again, alternative argument, when you have three candidates that look all the same, maybe ranked choice voting doesn't really help that much because you can't see the difference between them.
Well, they certainly all know the magnitude of what they'd be walking into. They've all served on the council. They've all had to make really tough budget decisions. This next county executive has to deal with huge cuts to the schools and what happens after that. Huge cuts in federal jobs to the constituency that lives here. Rising costs, right? Affordability. Everybody's talking about some of these major issues. It's not going to be a cakewalk for whoever wins this race.
Well, these are really big jobs with multi-billion-dollar budget responsibilities. So, yes, you're right. It's not going to be easy for any of them. And we haven't even begun to talk about the transportation stuff that is perennial and doesn't appear to be moving in a good direction either. The purple line.
Purple line.
Just
purple line.
Just
say that.
Just say purple
line.
So yes, this is a real problem, but it's also an opportunity. If you can, sort of galvanize enough support around innovative ideas, I think voters will stick with you, and if you can get enough of the council to go along with it, then perhaps you'll be able to implement some things that can make a real difference. However, 3 sitting council members are running. There are 1, maybe 2 other council members that didn't run this time who see themselves as a future county executive, right? I think that whoever wins, they're going to have a difficult time with the council, in part because of this whole notion of personal ambition. We all have things that we want to do in our lives, and just like, there are 50 people on Capitol Hill who wake up every day and see a future president in the mirror, I think that there are people in the county council who want to be successful and want to see success for the county, but want to see it in ways that reflect best on them.
There might have been even more people who might have considered running from the council, given, as you say, their level of ambition. This is not a group of people who just want to sit and serve. They want to do more.
And I'm not knocking ambition. We all have it. I think it's great. But let's just be clear on what the implications of that could be for policy decisions down the line.
Do you think that's why Elbridge got a lot of pushback in this last term, because of these ambitious council members?
Well, listen, I think that's the number one reason, quite frankly. Think about it.
But he also couldn't run for another term.
Right, yeah. Well, it's easy to say no to somebody.
That's what I'm saying,
So,
I want your job,
so no. I think there's certainly some of it, and I get it. It makes sense. And by the way, on a national level, wait until after the November elections. Our current president is going to hear a lot of people from his own party saying no.
Yeah.
And part of that is because they know he can't hurt them anymore, and that they have their own ambitions that they need to sort of carve out some space. You were talking earlier about daylight between the candidates. Well, one of the ways to do that is to take on the leader.
Wow. We talk about affordability a lot. We've heard this, aside from Trump, I'm going to fight Trump, also this affordability. Friedson talked about fiscal responsibility. Jawando talked about housing affordability. So for voters, what stands out truly when you really can't talk about policy as much? How do you cut through the noise?
I think likability has a great deal to play here. So if you were one of the maybe lucky voters that got a candidate visit at your house, or you were able to go to some sort of public event or volunteer for the campaign, that obviously will help. Advertising will help a little bit, right?
Okay.
Even though it's not a face-to-face interaction, one of the positive consequences of us watching TV the way that we do is we feel that we're close to a candidate, right? After seeing them over and over again, we feel like we get to know them because we start to understand, remember what they're going to say. It feels like we can anticipate what they're going to say. And so we feel a bit more of a connection there. What is kind of funny, going back to what Michael said, that like all three of these guys are sitting councilmen, and all of them are very loudly decrying the state of Maryland, of Montgomery County. I don't hear one of them saying, sorry for my role in that, And I mean, they certainly have different degrees of responsibility, I'm sure, on the margins, but it does truly say something interesting about that council and maybe the Democratic Party locally in Montgomery County, that three Democrats who otherwise appear to be pretty close on a lot of things couldn't consolidate a choice.
Well, we're going to keep talking about this, but we're going to get over to Matt at the big board right now because we're getting some more numbers in, some more details.
Yeah, it looks like the AP, and this is what the AP's projection is, that Adrian Boafo has won the Democratic primary in the 5th district out of this field of 24 that you were talking about, and they're giving it to him with only about 32.2% of the vote being the lead. I mean, you see Quincy Berebe has 18%, almost 19%. You Harry Dunn, 13%, and Rashawn Baker, 9%. But 32% looks like that is what it took to get you over the top in the 5th district based on just how many people were running in this race. If we want to take a look, because we have the heat totals here about where Boafo performed better, it looks like he cleaned up pretty well in Charles County. He got about 31% of the vote. Going to Prince George's, 31%. 35% in Anne Arundel County, which is Steny Hoyer's kind of even though he is the 5th district, that was sort of where his district began years ago. He's an Anne Arundel guy, and then he moved down to Calvert County, 33%, in St. Mary's County, 32%. So it kind of looks like if you go through each one, pretty much under the Anne Arundel County, it held the same in terms of those percentages. So Adrian Boafo is likely to be the winner of the primary here for the 5th district. Now, going forward, how will that play out in November? You heard our panelists talk about it pretty well. It's been 45 years of a Democrat in Steny Hoyer, and this district is pretty well designed to grab the top Democrat votes. But for argument's sake, let's go and take a look at what's happening in the Republican area. We've got Michelle Talkington versus Chris Chafee. There's not that many people in these places, let me just show you, that are actually registered Republican. So in the end, let's get rid of the heat totals and move out. Come back. Where is it? Totals. There we go. Okay, so Chris Chafee's in the lead here by about 2,684 votes. But this is the thing. Whether or not Chris Chafee, should he win, can defeat Adrian Boafo, just look at how many people vote in the primary. 36,000 Republicans vote in the primary. That was in 2022. And if you look at that, compare it to how many Democrats vote, it's 96,000. So that's why we're saying whoever wins the 5th in the Democratic vote, like Delegate Adrian Boafo is projected to be, is likely going to win there as well. I want to bounce out to some other races, and I'll try to turn off these totals and get out of here. Let's go over to the 6th district, where April McClain Delaney appears to have, with still 36% of the vote, in a small lead. It's been shrinking a bit. She was about 4 to 5% higher than David Trone a bit ago. Now she's about 687 votes, which is a margin of 3%, almost 3.5. again, very early, and this is going to be a tight race. I do want to see how they're doing and where they're doing well. So let's put this on for McClain Delaney. Her support seems to be coming from Garrett County, Frederick, and portions of Montgomery County. And for Trone, his is coming strictly from sort of Washington County and Allegheny County in terms of where they're amassing their better numbers. So, and it looks like in those places it's close even too, right? We've got, except for Garrett County and Montgomery County, April McClain Delaney is doing very well. So just kind of a look at that. That's very early on, but these are the tight races, right? You have the Montgomery County executive race, you have the 6th district race. Those are the ones where voters are really deciding about what they want to see in the future going forward for their representation. And it looks like there's, like our panelists were saying, not a whole lot of difference between the two. So they're trying to find these wedge issues or wedge things to talk about that show sort of the differences there. A few more checks here real quick. In the 6th district, I want to see how they're doing over here. Yeah, it looks like here Robin Ficker, perennial Republican candidate in Maryland, he seems to still have a lead over Chris Burnett. So again, you hate to say it, it's probably more likely or closer in the 6th district, right? Whoever wins the Trone McClain Delaney race has a higher chance of winning. They'll have better name recognition. Of course, they'll have a lot of incumbency money. But this is an area here, right, where you see potentially, Republicans could make a push because they have a higher percentage of Republicans, let's just say, in the 6th than back in the 5th district. So anyway, long story short, Boafo called in the 5th district. 6th district, it looks like we're still neck and neck, not sure what's going on there. You go into Montgomery County, the executive race they were just talking about, that's 100 votes, 200 votes separated depending on how much is coming in. It's a lot going on there. Exciting night for everyone. Oh, and then sorry, Maryland Republicans.
But
then
wait,
I'm done.
there's more.
Yeah, but wait, there's more. Dan Cox still has a little lead here. But yeah, that's what we're shaping up to see. I think as we get closer to 70%, we'll have a better idea whether or not Dan Cox is pulling away or if Ed Hale's going to have a push there. But anyway, guys, that's what we're seeing on the big board.
You sure that's it this time?
I promise that's it.
Long story long.
Long story long. I was real excited to see the Montgomery County executive race.
I'm sorry,
I take
it back.
I opened the door.
I didn't even say
I'm sorry,
it.
Matt.
I take it back.
I'm sorry.
Jeez, guys, can another guy talk for a minute?
The floor is yours.
I'm done.
You sure?
No, I was going to say back to the Montgomery County executive race. The thing that you guys were talking about that I wanted to add just color from the day that the budget was announced by Mark Elrich. All 3 of those guys that you're seeing who are in the top, Jawando, Friedson, and Glass, were all the first 3 to comment on the budget and say this is a despicable budget. This is a budget we don't like. And it was almost in that moment we could all sort of see, oh, this is where they're going to show their difference between themselves and the county executive. But during my time of talking to the 3 of them about what this looks like going forward, you're right. There weren't too many. Their platforms were not wildly different. I mean, they're all Democrats. But the one thing I wanted to point out was Jawando had the support of the teachers and the workers of the state, those unions, whereas Friedson had the police and the fire. I think that's an interesting set of endorsements and where those wedged. But that was kind of that's all I want to say.
Jawando is pulling up a little bit. Watching this
21%.
one. All right, Matt, we love you, but we're going to have to come back to you in a little bit.
I won't ever ask again if he has one more thing to say. Never again. Thank you, Matt. All right, let's get to Adrian Boafo's campaign event with the big news we just talked about moments ago, the AP calling that race for him in the 5th district.
Yes, Randy Hildreth is at the IBEW Local 26 headquarters in Lanham. I would imagine that there was a bit of a boost when AP called this race for Adrian Boafo.
Yeah, Matt did such a good job breaking down the big board and the numbers here. Folks, his supporters here who have been following this race obviously very closely, we could hear cheers here. And when we tease out the details, how this broke down in terms of the counties, as Matt mentioned, a portion of this seat covers Prince George's County. Boafo did very well there, but may not be a surprise. He's from or he was raised in Prince George's County, serves as a delegate. So obviously, clearly has a good bit of a support there. Now, in terms of what we're seeing here, we are watching the door. We are also watching the clock. I see some movement around, so I'm waiting to see if the man of the hour is here, but we're told that he should be here soon. Also, Representative Hoyer is expected to be here and speak. Earlier today, Representative Hoyer posted on social media talking about, the fact that he wants people to get out and vote, but then also reiterating or reaffirming his endorsement of Boafo to step into his shoes ultimately. Telling people on social media that Boafo has proven to Maryland voters that he is the man for the job. We know that, one, he has worked on Representative Hoyer's campaign. He served the city of Bowie on the city council, also serves as a delegate, and within the last 30 minutes had a chance to speak with Bowie's mayor about him being here, supporting Boafo during the course of his political career. He says very early on he saw a grit in Boafo as a politician and said that he would follow him to the very end. Take a listen.
So I first met Adrian when he got elected to the city council back in 2019. I remember the first months that we served together. We were in Annapolis trying to save the Bowie racetrack. And I remember just being absolutely wowed by how smart he was, his integrity, his honesty. He was a very rare breed of elected official, very young. And I remember very early on saying, this guy's going to go places and I'm going to be supporting him. Within a few years, he was in the House of Delegates, immediately dove in, got on a great committee. He was responsive, hardworking, and so when he said he was interested in running for Congress, I was very eager to sign up and help him out. For Bowie, it is such a cool thing for us to be able to have a congressman from the city who lives here, who knows us, who served us at the city level, the state level, who understands us and our needs. We could not ask for much more from a congressman. And knowing Adrian, I think he's going to dive in on day one and work quite hard for us.
All right, let's get right over to Aisha Brave Boys headquarters. She's been called the race for county executive, winning by a huge number.
And my DNA suggests that I am 57% Nigerian.
Yes, sir! Ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria in the building! Yes, sir!
And I grew up understanding the importance of hard work, the understanding that nothing is given to you, that you have to earn it. And people ask me, hey, why are you out here? You know, you got this, you got this. But what I said is that God loves a humble servant, a humble servant. And so it is with humility that I accept this Democratic nomination to continue my work as county executive here in gorgeous Prince George's County. I am also excited that this gentleman here will be the first gentleman of Prince George's.
Yes, sir! Come on! Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the first gentleman of the county! Woo! Yes, well, come on.
And of course, my mom will continue her duties as first mother, Norma Brave Boy. My father, Cuthbert Brave Boy, first father. My sister, Anika, will be first sister.
Let's go.
And my niece, Tiara, first niece. But seriously, let me tell you, it is overwhelming. You know, when I started as county executive, I was facing a significant $170 million structural deficit, the loss of the Six Flags site, the commanders indicating that they would leave, and uncertainty with the FBI. And also, we had so many federal layoffs, as you all recall. We were feeding federal workers for a large part of my first days in office. These are people who never thought that they would be in a food line, but they found themselves there because either they were laid off or they were furloughed and they weren't earning an income. And that's when we understood that our economy is fragile. We rely too heavily, I believe, on the federal government. And so what I've sought to do was to expand economic development in this county. And guess what? In less than a year, we've done that. We've increased our economic development portfolio by $10 billion. So we are now sitting at $18 billion in economic development activities happening in Prince George's County.
Y'all make some noise, come on!
We competed for the biggest prize when it came to an entertainment venue, Sphere. Sphere is coming to National Harbor here in Prince George's County.
Yep.
We We also focused on ensuring that our Blue Line corridor was moving forward so we could have real transit-oriented development. And I can tell you we have cranes in the air at Addison Road because not only were we committed to development, but we were committed to changing our permitting process so that it was streamlined and that people could get permits more without as much effort. But still, we dotted all our I's, crossed all our T's. I mean, the process is the process, but we just needed to be diligent. And I'm so grateful that the team at DPI understood the assignment, and we are delivering on major projects all across this county, from the Discovery District in College Park, obviously to our Blue Line corridor. And we are also upgrading our retail. You know, it may seem like a little thing, but I can tell you it's a big thing that we are getting Sprouts here in Prince George's County. I want to thank Walla Blagay for all her hard work and her dedication in making that happen, because she was not interested in anything that we already had. And so we worked together along with Danielle Hunter, who looks like she is going to be our not only current but future councilwoman for District 6.
Yes.
It's looking good. It's looking good. And we are also delivering. We are delivering on our promises to be fiscally prudent, our promises to invest in those things that our county needs and wants and deserves, and really change the paradigm for Prince George's County. This is our renaissance. This is our renaissance. And you know what? We are not going to let grass grow under our feet. We're moving fast. People ask me all the time, why do you move so fast? Well, we got to get this done yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. Because we've waited too long. We've waited too long for change. And change is happening right now. So again, I am grateful to each and every one of you for being here. I want to thank our council chair, Crystal Oriada, for being here. And if all holds the way it looks right now, our next senator for District 24, Tiffany Alston, we appreciate you. This is a great night. It's a great night, but it's a great night and a great win for every single person in this room. So I want to say thank you for your belief in me. Thank you for your votes. Thank you for being at the polls. Thank you for your prayers. And thank you for being who you are. You are what makes Prince George's County the best county in America. You are what makes this county work. And I'm so grateful for each of you. So if you are a candidate or an elected official, can you please join me on stage?
Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise so all our elected officials, please put your hands together for them. Tiffany Alston, Daniel Hunter, Chair Crystal Oriada.
Derek Coley is coming up.
Yes.
Is Andrea?
Delegate Andrea Harris.
Is Delegate Harrison here? All right, let's come on up. Come on up, Delegate.
Come on up, come on up, come on up, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your hands together for them.
Judge Lakeisha Allen.
Judge Makisha Allen.
Well, it's an election party in Prince George's County.
That is hype man and all.
It sure is. Aisha Braveboy speaking to supporters in Prince George's County as she has become the projected winner of the Prince George's County executive race. And she is bringing up people who are both either running for office or are in public office to show that they have solidarity together in the county they love.
We're reminded that she jumped into this role, or won this role, what, a year ago?
Yeah.
In a special election to replace Angela Alston-Brooks, who is now in the Senate. And she listed some of the events that have happened within just the last year. And it's mind-blowing. You talk about Six Flags, That shut down the commanders, FBI headquarters, not going to Prince George's County, Doge layoffs. She had to find a new superintendent, fire chief, a police chief. Yeah. So a lot has happened in that short time. But voters are clearly confident in her leadership and moving forward. What do you make about the future of the county and some of the challenges ahead?
Well, Prince George's County, like all of the surrounding counties, is going to have to reposition itself with these Doge cuts. I don't think we fully appreciate just how much those cuts are going to have. We talk about affordability, and that word has become more of an umbrella term to address a whole bunch of things. But we probably have yet to see the full impact of that on things like housing. We need to take a look at foreclosure numbers and all those kinds of things, because people are in trouble.
Yeah.
And so what she's going to have to figure out with the county council and other leaders is how to navigate this in a way that reduces the amount of pain that folks are going to have to feel, in addition to what they've already felt. The truth is, policymakers often are trying to make the best decision from the available options, and in many cases, those options aren't necessarily good ones. And so this is an endorsement of her, at least in this sort of 1 year interim period. And hopefully she can take this and continue to move through with the council and find ways to give people the relief they need. And unfortunately, the nature of public policy is such that not everybody who needs help can get it. And that's the reality of things. And hopefully she can help as many people as she possibly can.
You see her bringing in members of the county council, and she talked quite a bit about the conditions, what people are feeling in Prince George's County, people who maybe didn't need help but needing it help now. We've done stories about how they've set up these food pantries at libraries, and so just this real effort of outreach to reach people who didn't need the help before, but because of these Doge cuts and because of all the changes that have happened in the landscape, need those services now.
Yeah, and it really, I think it goes to show too how important, we kind of, on paper, colloquially, we say that local politics is really important, and then, lament that not as many voters participate in those kind of lower level elections. This is real life. This is the kind of policy and the kind of office that directly affects people's budgets, their household budgets, their own pocketbooks, their own ability to kind of dream and plan for themselves, for their families. So even, as you mentioned, in the short year that she's been the county executive, has already faced some really major challenges. I'm sure that will continue. That's kind of the nature of the game. And bringing up some of the other elected officials there. It's a good message for her to portray, given her short stance in the office to date. That's one thing that she can kind of point to say, I am building these relationships. These are a longer term partnership. And these are people that I will want to continue to build something of substance with, and that's a good place for someone to be who's been in office for a short year and kind of getting a full term of her own going in. It's a good face to show.
How do you heard her talk here, Aisha Braveboy, there about the county's reliance on the federal government, and we know a lot of our localities that surround the district are trying to branch out and not rely so heavily on the federal government. How do you do that in Prince George's County? Do you think that those jobs are coming back post-Trump? Or do they need to change for good?
I think that some of them may return, but most of them won't. There's another part to this. Jurisdictions around the country, members of Congress from around the country know that these federal jobs are stable and well-paying, and they themselves may represent districts that don't really have a lot of that. So one of the real sort of underplayed stories in the early part of the second Trump administration was not just the firings, but the movement of jobs to other parts of the country.
Yes, to other parts.
Yeah. And so those jobs aren't coming back, but there will be a regeneration of new jobs. Consultancies, lobbyists, those kinds of things are always going to be rooted here locally.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these conversations around data centers because the people of Prince George's County have pushed back quite a bit, as have some of their county leadership about this whole idea of bringing data centers there. And yet they have all this land, they have all this space, right? And people who are entrepreneurial are saying, well, it makes sense to bring this here, to bring jobs here, to bring opportunities here. And so it will be interesting to see how long they keep pushing back on data centers and where that other source of revenue is going to come from.
Yeah, we have some varying opinions here from the people kind of up for discussion tonight. So declared winner Adrian Boafo has said that one of his most unpopular opinions is that we should have a measured and structured approach to allowing data centers into, kind of the larger District 5, but again, PG County. In Montgomery County, also, data centers are a large part of the conversation, with some daylight actually in between there. I mean, the issue is if data centers, on the one hand, are offering to bring in, hundreds, thousands, however many jobs to the local residents, then the kind of tit for tat becomes, well, let's give them a little bit of a subsidy to bring those jobs here instead of our neighboring county or neighboring state. But then what actually happens is that the distribution of those energy costs get passed on to residents, right? And so not only do we see our energy bills going up because it's summertime and it's hot out there, right? We're trying to cool down, but also now you have to worry about data centers that are supposedly bringing jobs into this to the area, but then also directly hurting your household costs. And it's a complicated issue to balance. But at least in District 5, we have a candidate who is supportive. We'll see what happens in Montgomery County, kind of on the details between maybe Jawando and Friedson. A little bit of daylight in between the two of them on their approach to how those energy costs should be paid for and supplemented.
Okay, I see our Matt Gregory standing by at the big board right now. Matt, do you have any updates for us?
We're just going to go through what we've got. For the most part, taking a look, we've got Adrian Boafo, who is Adrian Boafo over here, who has been called the nominee presumptively for District 5 for the Democrats. Like we were talking about, came out of this. Tell us back. All right, guys, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, Matt, thank you. This is a WUSA 9 special report. We are following closely as live election results in Maryland's primary race roll out. Let's get to a few key races that have already been called.
Yeah, incumbent Governor Wes Moore has clinched the win in the race for Democratic nominee for governor against Eric Felber. And it was pretty much a landslide.
And we're still watching a somewhat packed race for the Republican nominee for governor, with Dan Cox currently in the lead.
Yeah, Adrian Boafo takes the win in the race for Democratic nominee for Congress in District 5. This comes after his endorsement from Congressman Steny Hoyer.
Republican candidate Chris Chafee is currently in the lead on the other side of the aisle. I think we're just a pace behind with our graphics.
There we go, right there.
There we go.
53% with half reporting so far. And Democratic Prince George's County Executive, we've been talking about this for a moment. Aisha Braveboy is projected to keep her seat with no Republicans running in the primary.
All right, now let's send things back over to Matt Big Board Gregory, who has got everything we need to know at this hour. All right, Matt, take it away.
That was a whirlwind. All right, let's go through it. You were just seeing it there. I want to point out that Boafo wins in District 5 out of this field of 24, but he's only going to win with a plurality, 32%. Moving over to Dan Cox and the Ed Hale race, because this would be the presumptive challenger to Governor Wes Moore. They still haven't given it to Cox yet, and as you can see, only 138,000 votes or so coming in, but that's about 68%. And Cox, who ran in 2022, looks like he is on his way potentially to winning again. He is doing very well in the western and eastern portions of the state, whereas his opponent Ed Hale seems to be cleaning up right outside the Baltimore metro, probably where he has a lot more name recognition. We're seeing that there. Now we move over to the 6th district, where it looks like, again, we're still almost 3 to 4% with April McClain Delaney in the lead here. So that only has 43% of the votes coming in. We're still going to be waiting on that one. We can call the 5th district, right? We can call Braveboy for the executive in Prince George's County, and we can call the governor, Wes Moore, for running for re-election. And we are also able to call, sorry, there's so many that are passing through my head right now. Boafo, Braveboy, Moore, still waiting on McClain Delaney Trone, still waiting on Cox. So that's what we're seeing. I'm going to go back to taking a look at my numbers, and we'll have more coming up soon.
All right, and we, of course, are streaming live right now on the WUSA 9 app and the WUSA 9 YouTube page, so scan that QR code with your phone. We're giving you live coverage and analysis that you can't find anywhere else. All right, we're back, and let's take a listen to Steny Hoyer.
Is not here tonight, and the governor's not here now. You know, he had an election as well, by the way. I don't know whether you heard, but he won. I know it came as a shock to you. I called him and said, boy, I was so sweating this race for you, Governor. But they would be here. And in fact, they are here. And they were here. And they spoke up and said, we believe in Adrian Boafo. And they recommended to the people who had voted for them in the governor's race and in the Senate race, we believe in Adrian. And I had the great privilege of doing the same and telling people, I believe in Adrian Boafo. I believe in the quality he will bring to the Congress of the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, America is a deeply divided nation. We need to bring it together. Adrian Boafo, every time I've seen him, in every office I've seen him, brings people together. Sarah Elfreth, a member of Congress from an adjoining district, said to me, as soon as I endorsed him, I want to be for him too. She served with him in the House of Delegates. She was in the Senate. And she said, I see in him the quality that we want from a Maryland member of Congress, what we want the Maryland team to reflect. Tonight is the passing of a baton to a new generation, to a generation that is looking to the future. A generation that knows our country is challenged and doesn't like the fighting and division that's going on and some of the hateful activities that are going on. Adrian Boafo is going to go to Congress and he's going to be part of solutions, not of problems. Representing this district for 45 years in Congress has been the honor of my life. I want to thank the people of Prince George's County and indeed the people of the 5th Congressional District. But I have said before, and I will say again, I would not be in the Congress of the United States if it hadn't been for Prince George's County. And very frankly, I would not have been in the Congress of the United States if it were not for the African-American community in Prince George's County, sticking with me, standing with me, lifting me up. So I'd say thank you. Throughout this election, Adrian has shown Marylanders what I have seen in him for years. Intellect. He's a smart young man. Smart in a good way. Humble at the same time. Willing to listen. Willing to gather people together. He has a warmth and love of people. You see that. Every time Adrian Boafo smiles, I think to myself, A, it's the best smile in America, and B, it reflects his inner feelings about people, about welcoming people in to hear from them. His principles. You know, there's some people that raised issues in this campaign that were not friendly. And I went on television and said, look, I know Adrian Boafo. He is a man of principle and the courage to look people in the eye and say, this is where I stand because this is what I believe. I'm interested in hearing what you, but we disagree. He is going to be a man for the people, not for the interests of any special interest, although everybody in this room has a special interest. Your spouse is a special interest. Your children are a special interest. The health of your family is a special interest. We all have special interests. And he accompanies all these qualities with a legislative skill that I've seen manifested at the local level in Bowie as the mayor pro tem. Now, he waited a long time to become mayor pro tem. I think he'd been a member of the council about 22 minutes. I've moved along so slowly in my career compared. He has the courage and skill to do what is right for the people, and a clear vision. People heard that vision, and they got through all the chafe and the throwing of bricks and this, that, and the other, and they saw a person of principle and purpose. Adrian lives and breathes public service. Angela and Dad, you must be, I don't know you that well, but I know you through your son's reflection of the principles and values you have given him. God bless you. He has a strong record of delivering results for workers, for military families, for children, and for all Marylanders. That's what he's done as city councilman, as Bowie's mayor pro tem. And again, he went to the House of Delegates, as all of you know, fairly recently. And it took him longer than 22 minutes to become assistant majority leader. So I'm going to warn people downtown, well, it may take him a week or 2 weeks, but you're going to be replaced. No, I don't want to worry any of my fellow leaders that's what he's going to do. But he is going to be such a positive addition to the Congress of the United States, a deeply divided Congress, a Congress that is not standing up for what's right against the President of the United States who's doing what's wrong. He said, and every candidate said, they're going to stand up to Trump. And I told people, you can believe Adrian Boafo when he says he's going to stand up for principle and against this president taking the country in the wrong direction. Now, for me, leaving the House is hard. People congratulate me on my retirement. I said, you know, I really didn't want to retire. But then again, I didn't think becoming 87 last week was a premature retirement. It was time. It was time for me to leave and pass the torch to somebody I believed in, and that's what I did. My departure has made it easier by knowing that Adrian will carry on this fight with great ability and fidelity. And it's made easier knowing that all of you, and many who are not in this room, not here at this extraordinary headquarters, as Tom Clark said, that stands for the workers, for the people. You knocked on doors. Who knocked on doors? I know we had a lot of people knocking on doors. You made calls. Raise your hand if you made calls. Some of you contributed to this campaign, not only your time and talent, but also your treasure. You engaged and carry on the good fight alongside Adrian, that you will have his back as you've had mine over the years. Again, I want to thank those of you who worked so tirelessly for me, and that was a 45-year effort. So you have 44 years, 364 days to go with Adrian. Ladies and gentlemen, our country needs us all. It needs us all to be the country that is a beacon of hope and opportunity that it has been through the centuries. A country where character counts, where morality is principle, and where truth is honored. That's what Adrian Boafo will bring to the job of Congressman of the 5th Congressional District. Adrian will be a congressman who reflects our best values, not our coarsest. Our best values, not our coarsest. Thank you. Thank you for the hard work. It was well worth it, and now we get to celebrate. Ladies and gentlemen, America needs us. These are the times that try men's souls. Adrian Boafo is going to be a light unto the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, the next congressman for the 5th Congressional District, my friend, Adrian Boafo.
Oh my gosh. What's going on, family? How are we feeling tonight? Ladies and gentlemen, I just got off the phone with Harry Dunn. I just want to say really quick, thank you to all the 23 candidates who ran in this race. It takes a special level of courage and partial insanity to run for the Congress of the United States. So thank you guys. Harry Dunn is my brother. And I know we're going to work together for this country. Ladies and gentlemen, we did it. To everyone in this room who believed in our vision from day one, with my love and gratitude, this victory is yours. To all of you who knocked doors, stayed on the phone all day, helped get the last voters to the polls before they closed. To the super volunteers, the drivers, the poll watchers, to those who brought us warm food and built playlists that uplifted our spirits, I am forever grateful. And to my family that came here from Ghana and worked hard every single day. I've got to also say the Black Stars tied. I think that's the 2 wins in one day. To my family that came from Ghana and worked hard every day to give me purpose and education, thank you. And I want to thank the men and women of labor, especially our host. Let's hear it for IBEW Local 26, Tom Clark. Tom is also a DeMatha man, so he's one of my favorite people in the world. I also want to thank MSCA and all the educators. Madam Vice President, thank you for being here tonight. The Maryland firefighters, AFGE, and all the federal employees who supported this campaign, and so many other hardworking people who fought alongside us. I want to thank my colleagues in Annapolis who I serve with. You have had my back from day one. And to Team Maryland, to Governor Moore, Senator Alsobrooks, Congresswoman Elfreth, much like you've stood by me this entire time, I am excited to stand with you in the Congress of the United States to fight for Maryland's future. But y'all, I gotta give a special thanks to my mentor and to my friend, Steny Hamilton Hoyer. For 45 years, Steny Hoyer carried the banner of this party. He's been our Danish knight in shining armor, our rock, our steady comfort through times of pain. No one has had the kind of impact on Maryland's 5th Congressional District as Steny Hoyer has, and frankly, maybe never will. Thank you, Mr. Hoyer. Thank you, Steny. Y'all, at first glance, it might not seem obvious, but our stories are actually very similar. Steny and I are both the sons of immigrants. We grew up believing in America that drew our parents from across the sea. An America where hard work and responsibility are the keys to every door. An America knowing where possibility has no ceiling. Both of us were inspired by public servants who were transformational for our time. For Steny, it was hearing John F. Kennedy call for a new generation of leadership to accept the torch of democracy. For me, it was watching Barack Obama teach my generation to organize and fight for the America we were promised. Both Steny and I served in Annapolis. Now, you know, he served in the Senate, I served in the House. I clearly am biased today. I think the House is a better place to serve. But we fought really hard, striving to make Maryland a leader on civil rights and education and health care, on protecting our veterans and expanding economic opportunity. And Steny and I both believe in the power of the Congress to deliver for people and help communities everywhere make it in Maryland and make it in America. That's why Steny decided to run. That's why I decided to run, to take up the unfinished work of American democracy. That's the promise he made 45 years ago, and frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that's a promise he has kept. Now, tonight, the Democratic voters of the 5th Congressional District decided that it's time to pass the torch to a new generation of leadership. And it's with great humility that I accept that responsibility and trust you've placed in me to continue the work that Steny advanced. Between now and November, I will continue meeting with our neighbors across all 5 counties here in Maryland's 5th, encouraging Marylanders to be engaged in our politics, setting out an achievable, progressive vision that can benefit all who live here and bring our communities together. Never in my recent memory has this work seemed more urgent. In Donald Trump's America, if you work hard and you play by the rules, a good life just seems farther and farther away. And so many who break the rules seem to get farther and farther ahead. Dedicated federal employees are losing their livelihoods right here in Maryland's 5th Congressional District. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and his billionaire friends are getting sweetheart deals with taxpayer money. How's that fair? While Obamacare achieved major progress, health costs are rising again. And y'all see what's happening in Washington. Republicans are still doing everything they can to turn back the clock. The prices of gases, groceries, and everyday necessities are going up. It's getting harder and harder and harder to find housing that doesn't eat up most of your monthly paycheck. Affordability, access, and accountability. These must be our watchwords, and they will be my guideposts in the Congress. But frankly, even if Donald Trump weren't president, many in our communities would still be falling behind. While Donald Trump is making everything worse, he didn't create all of our problems. He created a lot of them, but not all of them. They've been building for a generation. And while they affect us here in Maryland, they can't be solved only in Maryland. Our biggest challenges are national. That's why we need a strong, Democratic-led Congress. And over the next few months, I'll be doing my small part to make Hakeem Jeffries the next Speaker of the House. Now, it's not lost upon me that should we prevail in November, I'll be entering the Congress in America's 251st year. A country whose founding generation didn't believe someone like me could be a part of the institution or even a part of democracy. The American story teaches us one critical lesson. We only fulfill the promise of this nation if we run this race together, with the Lord in our hearts and our neighbors by our side. Ladies and gentlemen, the torch is in our hands. We either run with it or watch it burn out. Now tonight we're holding it high, I'll tell you that. We're feeling good. And as my favorite president says, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to run. I'm ready to work. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, the work before us is heavy. It's hefty. Now before I close, y'all know I'm about 5. That shouldn't have been that funny, y'all. I see some people over laughing over here. I'm gonna get y'all later. Okay. And a gift that was given to me by Mr. Hoyer, I couldn't tell if it was a prank or a gift, by Mr. Notter, who's standing in the back there, is a stool I'm standing on now. Trust me, we tried this little exercise without the stool. It didn't really work out well. Here we go. This stool belongs to an amazing woman. Her name is Barbara Mikulski. ladies and gentlemen, while we pass the torch to a new generation of leadership, and if we prevail in November, we'll make history as the youngest person of color to ever represent this state in the Congress of the United States. But ladies and gentlemen, I do this by standing on the shoulders of the great Steny Hoyer, of Ben Cardin, of Barbara Mikulski, of Paul Sarbanes, of amazing, legendary Marylanders who came before us. So ladies and gentlemen, let's have a great night tonight. Thank you guys. God bless y'all. And on to November. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, you just heard Adrian Boafo there. As he mentioned, former U.S. Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn called him to concede in the race for the 5th Congressional District. Let's hear what he had to say.
They have, NBC has called the race for Adrian Boafo. Oh, no. Yeah, I know, right? Oh, no. It's okay. I appreciate all y'all's support. I'll say a couple things. And being very calculated with my remarks, right? I always believe Democrats are greater than Republicans. They talk about the lesser of two evils, but there's literally one side that is absolutely evil, and Republicans are showing that every day with this administration. The cruelty that they're doing to people, immigrants, people of color, women, they are attacking us. However, we have the opportunity to not just elect Democrats, we need to make sure that we're electing the right Democrats that understand the urgency of where we are in the country right now. I accept the election results. I'm disappointed with them. I can promise you I'm not going to go storm the Capitol to say that the election was stolen. I can promise you that. But what I also will promise you is that I will keep getting up every single morning with the heart and the mission to make sure we are putting people first. And unfortunately, we did not see that in this election.
So that was Harry Dunn giving a bit of a concession speech, saying that he called Adrian Boafo. Adrian Boafo says they are brothers, and he hopes that they will be able to work together on behalf of Maryland.
The work is not done.
That's right. We got more vote totals coming into our newsroom.
Yeah, polls closed 2.5 hours ago. Matt Gregory is at the big board tracking it all for us. What do you have, Matt?
Yeah, you got me over there looking through the governor's race for the Republican nominee. And this has been called by the AP for Dan Cox, who ran against Wes Moore back in 2022 and lost to the now Governor Moore. And he is now looks like he will again represent Republicans in terms of being the nominee here. But just to give you an idea of how he performed and why he beat Ed Hale, who was the recent convert to the Republican Party, it looks like where Cox really did well seems to be in, like I said, Western Maryland, so like portions of Frederick over to Garrett County, and then on the Eastern Shore, he cleaned up sort of in the southern portion here down to Somerset and Worcester counties, that area there. And in the places where Ed Hale did win, if you want to look at that, it's mostly right around Baltimore, but even those win totals, let's say here in Carroll County or Howard County or Anne Arundel County, they're only by a few, whereas the percentage margin for Hale was, for the percentage margin for Cox was much higher in the areas where he won. So that's what we're tracking there. We've already shown you Adrian Boafo winning in the 5th district. So we move over to the 6th district to get an idea here of just how this race is going. Again, this is still a very tight race, very close. April McClain Delaney has a slight lead, but she's only about 1,400 votes ahead of David Trone. This is one of those places where we've seen a lot of money. You've heard John Duran talk about it. This is one of the most expensive House races in the United States. And right now it looks like for about $7 million, you have a slight lead over the $25 million man here with 38.5% of the vote. So we've got to keep an eye on that. What does this mean for that district as well? This is the only other one where we might see some sort of challenge that will be significant from the Republican Party. It looks like Robin Ficker is here with a small, let's say, 6% lead right now over Chris Burnett. But we've got 67% of votes coming in, so we're still waiting to call the Republican and the Democrat for the 6th district. And of course, back over to the 5th district. Chris Chafee is in the lead here, but this is a district that has not gone Republican in decades, so it's likely in this scenario that what we see is Adrian Boafo walking away with a win in November. But of course, you know, as the presumptive nominee at this point from a field of 24, Adrian Boafo will be heading into November as the 5th District's Democrat nominee. Guys?
Okay, Michael, Candace, still here with us. We heard Adrian Boafo. We also heard Steny Hoyer. Talk about an endorsement, right? This is also, I guess, Steny Hoyer's moment, and we should, you know, acknowledge that he's been there for more than 4 decades. Ronald Reagan was president when he
sure was.
When he joined Congress. What do you make of this moment for him?
So I'm glad you mentioned that. They were both elected in the same year, 1980. And I should note, and he alluded to this a bit in his remarks, you may have noticed he mentioned black voters and
Prince George's
in
County specifically.
Well, when his district was first cut, it was in the county. That was it. And it wasn't until the mid-90s that his district was sort of moved further east. So he's had a long and deep and rich connection to the state, to the district, to that part of the state. And so it was really good to see him give sort of a valedictory speech as he was heading out. And given their relationship, I want to make a slight prediction. So seniority really is the big deal in Congress. The longer you're there, the more seniority you get, and that gives you an opportunity to get plus committee assignments. Well, it is not unusual for senior members of Congress who've been around for a really long time to resign a little early. So their successor, who they endorse, in this case Boafo, he's sort of mentored Boafo in some ways. I would not be surprised if in November or December he calls it a career a little early to allow Boafo the opportunity to be sworn in early, serve in this particular term, and have a leg up, even just a short one, on all those candidates who are elected for the first time in November, but start in January. Yes. So that really is a way to serve your congressional district on the way out. Now this is technical stuff, it's in the weeds, I got all that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. They clearly have a wonderful relationship, and it's great to see two very different people who all have similarities in their stories, and given Hoyer's reputation, I could see that pretty easily.
I was struck by him saying, obviously we know America is deeply divided and he believes that Boafo could be a light, but he said this is a passing of a baton to a new generation, right? Something that Democrats have been talked about quite a bit for not doing, for not setting up the next generation for success. Steny Hoyer seemed to be saying, I'm going to use all of my political capital, everything I have left, to ensure that Adrian Boafo has the best start.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think it was a full-throated endorsement by Steny Hoyer. It's kind of ironic in a way that the endorsement also brought the heat, I think, that Boafo experienced a lot of, because mostly through kind of the AIPAC support that Steny brought along, right? Has been a big supporter. The Steny Hoyer, along with AIPAC, they've had a great relationship over the past, 40 years or so. It is really nice to see in that moment that they do have a real personable relationship, and there seems to be a lot of mutual respect there, which is nice. It's also very interesting in this race, again, because of how crowded it was. Reflecting on some of the figures and whatever they'll be in the final count, because there are so many other opponents, you start to question how well that Steny endorsement might have played if there were fewer opponents to Adrian Boafo, if there was someone that was kind of the alternative to what we would probably call Boafo, like the establishment, new generation, yes, but kind of the establishment, traditional Democrat, at least on paper, kind of a one-to-one replacement for Steny Hoyer, right? That gives voters some reliability, which is nice going into the future, but it also very clearly dismisses the more progressive approach that in this particular race was spread out over multiple candidates. So we could have ended up very well with a very different story today if it weren't for the crowded field.
Yeah, but it seemed to be in this case, after serving for more than 4 decades, for Hoyer, the guy that you endorsed won.
Yeah.
That says a lot about his legacy as well, I take it, yeah?
It really does.
Yeah, I think Hoyer is going out on a high. You know, in a time in which there are long-serving incumbents who are staying too long or are losing in their last election, Steny Hoyer gets to go out on his own terms, literally pick his successor, and then ride off into the sunset. And so I think he has served as an example on how to move on. Now, look, 45 years is a long time.
All that pent up demand over 45 years.
If you want to make the case that perhaps he could have done this a few years ago, fine. I'm not going to, I'm not prepared to argue against that. But I will say he did it in a way that I think will serve as an example going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This is ending on a pretty high note for Steny Hoyer after a long career, very well known and well liked in the state of Maryland, generally speaking, but also leadership in the party. Like, he's made a big impact on national politics over the past several decades. And so, you know, as again, the crowded field might have threatened that kind of storybook ending, but I think he got it tonight, which is sort of nice to see, just the full circle moment.
How effective can he really be in this role? You know, I think of where Steny Hoyer's been, how long he's been there, but the Congress that he's walking into, Adrian Boafo, you know, this is changing.
He said it's a very challenged situation here.
Yeah.
Standing up to Trump and also lowering costs.
There is no reason to have high expectations. And that's not because
of Adrian Boafo or of any politician.
Any first-term member of the House.
Yes.
They go into on the bottom of the list in seniority. They're trying to build relationships across the institution. It takes time. It's a very difficult job. And oh, by the way, you're in the minority party, right? Now, in November, all of the evidence says that the Democrats will recapture the House. And if that's the case, it will be slightly easier. Right. But as a backbench, really inexperienced member, there's no reason to expect anything approaching what Steny Hoyer is leaving on. Because remember, he's been in that job for 45 years. He knows every corner of that place. He knows how to get things done. And so Boafo is going to need to learn quickly. He's going to be given an opportunity to do that. He's going in with the hand stamp of Steny Hoyer, and I think that's going to be very helpful. There are going to be members of Congress who say, you know, Steny was my guy, you're Steny's successor, you know, and that kind of personal stuff matters in the legislative process. And so I think he has great potential. I also think that we need to pump the brakes on any major expectations right now.
Okay. Well, we know about the results for District 5. Now we're still waiting to find out what's happening with the expensive District 6 race.
Yeah, let's head out to David Trone's watch party now in Frederick, Maryland.
Yeah, Lorenzo, this race, the difference right now, less than 1,500 votes in favor of April McClain Delaney. Let's check out the party, because these attendees are glued to the results that keep coming in, and it has been tight all night. Of course, these folks hoping David Trone wins this primary and potentially wins his congressional seat in the 6th district that he held for 3 terms before running for Senate in 2024. A major storyline we've been talking about all night is the money spent by these David Trone, April McClain Delaney on their campaigns. A combined $32 million coming out of each candidate's pocket. 25 million, just under 25 million of those dollars coming from David Trone, self-funded in his bid to regain this congressional seat in the 6th district. The former 3-term congressman is going to try to get the votes. Deep blue suburban Montgomery County, Democrat leading Frederick County. Also got to win the more conservative rural western panhandle of the state. Trone and his opponent McClain Delaney, they've run several attack ads against each other, and both candidates says, well, the other one started the negative push. Trone's campaigns claimed McClain Delaney voted with Trump and MAGA Republicans 22% of the time, but McClain Delaney disputes it, says she has the backing of Maryland's top Democratic leaders because of her work on issues Democrats care about. For Trone, he says the biggest issue tonight is who voters trust to take that fight back to Washington.
At stake is really fighting back against Donald Trump. I mean, we can't have a member of Congress that doesn't push back 100% of the time against Trump's initiatives that make absolutely no sense whatsoever.
In an interview with McClain Delaney earlier this week with WUSA 9, she said was pushed back on that, saying she's got support for Governor Wes Moore and Maryland's Democratic congressional delegation. She says support shows she's the candidate that's focused on lowering costs, protecting rights, and fighting the Trump agenda, which even David Trone says is really what he believes is at stake in this primary election. Guys.
Well, we've been watching the numbers come in, John, and it looks like April McClain Delaney is starting to grow that distance between the two of them at this point. So we're going to keep watching this for sure.
Yeah, with 72% of the votes counted so far. Let's get to our Katie Lusso now. She is with the McClain Delaney team at her campaign event at the Holiday Inn in Gaithersburg. Katie.
Yeah, and there is a crowd in here now. Let me tell you, this room is standing. Everyone is standing up. They just got asked to come in. People heard is the word that they used, and they are getting ready for April McClain Delaney to enter the room. You know, just in the last 20 minutes or so, we heard from her husband, John Delaney, who, as you know, he served in this position from 2013 to 2019. So he thanked the crowd. He told them, stand by, she's going to be coming in, and we just heard that she will be in here shortly. I can tell you that the room is really excited for her. They have been here all day long, really excited for her to come in and excited to share this moment with her. They are also hopeful. Obviously, these numbers are very close, but they are hopeful that she will get this win here. Now, I spoke to her a little bit earlier, specifically when we talk about the relationship between her and David Trone. We have obviously seen that relationship get very intense. You know, we saw them both really attacking each other. I asked her because, you know, she and David Trone were friends at one point. So take a listen to our conversation from a little bit earlier this evening. I know at one point you and David Trone were friendly. To be in this stage right now, how does that feel? Is it disappointing?
You know, it's incredibly disappointing. I mean, yes, I've known David. I've known his brother for a long time. You know, my husband helped him when he was, you know, first became a member. And this just assault of lies, saying I'm not pro-choice, this assault of lies of, you know, my effectiveness in Congress and my votes. I found it very disappointing because I think it really misrepresented who I am and what I was trying to do. And I believe that you work 24/7. You lead with your heart, and you really lift up public service, and that's not how we should campaign against one another. So I am a little bit upset, but you know what? I just have to move on. I've been saying my gratitudes in the morning, and I'm very blessed by an amazing husband in John, and my 4 kids, and this community of people that have bubbled up around me. And I have all volunteers that have just bubbled up around, and so when you have that, you know, how can you not feel grateful?
So I do want to show you the crowd in here. If we can we show the room a little bit? I want to show just how many people are in here, and they are waiting for her to come in. People have been taking photos, you know, really capturing all that there is to this moment, hoping to hear from her shortly. You know, when she was talking about David Trone, she talked a lot about how she believes that this should not be negative the way we have seen it be. She talked also, though, about how important elections like this one are, specifically primary elections, because she talked about how these are the ones that have the most impact on things like your infrastructures, your schools. And when we talk about her big priorities, she told me she has 3 big priorities in all of this. She said that her big priority, number 1, is fighting against the attack, the assault by what she says is coming from the current administration, President Donald Trump. She said that attack on things like reproductive rights, things like the immigrant community and the LGBT community. She also talked about wanting to focus on affordability, specifically things like rising energy costs, housing, daycare, elderly care even. And she also said she wants to build up trust in our democracy and make sure there is not intimidation traction in the polls and things of that nature. So again, we heard from her husband, John Delaney, not too long ago, and he said April McClain Delaney will be making her way into the room in just a few moments. I did speak to him very briefly. I asked him if he wanted to speak with us on camera, and he said, it's not my job anymore. He is really putting all of the focus on his wife. And I know he said he asked the room to keep a positive outlook here, to stay energetic and keep hyping her up, because these numbers are so close that they want to make sure the energy is high here. So I can tell you everyone in this room is watching closely. One other person I want to mention that I spoke with April McClain Delaney's hairdresser. And, you know, Leslie, we know that hairdressers have all of the secrets. I have to say, I thought it was impressive that her hairdresser came out here to be a part of this moment with her. Unfortunately, she did not share any secrets with me. She said the most impressive thing, interesting thing she found about April McClain Delaney is that her father was a potato farmer in Idaho. She really felt at ease with that. She really loved that. She said she's a gardener herself, and she found that really interesting. So that was the closest I could get to a secret, Leslie and Lorenzo.
Well, you tried, Katie. You tried.
Yeah. That's what matters.
All right.
A for effort.
Yeah, we'll come back to you if something happens between now and then. All right.
Okay, we want to get some of our final thoughts from our experts here on particularly this race right here.
Yes. Both of you have had such interesting observations on this.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Share that with us.
Well, I don't know if this is a pearl, but I do think we need to have some broader conversations about money in politics. We can't have, in my opinion, a legislature that is so disproportionately filled with people who financially have no real connection to the lives of everyday people. I'm sure that both of the candidates in this race, good and decent people, but I'm just concerned about the money. The Constitution allows it, you know, the Supreme Court has ruled as they have, but I really do think it boxes out our opportunity to have more dignified, more policy-focused conversations. Now, again, we've talked about this earlier. Voters don't necessarily want that. They're moved by the anger and the animus. I get that. I just don't think we're better off as a result.
Why do you think Trone wants this seat again?
I think it's access to be able to have an impact and be able to do something. I don't know if he's, you know, bored with his wealth, or maybe with, you know, I don't. But you know, it is a different kind of influence when you have a political seat, right? And so who knows what his personal motivations are? One would presume that he probably has a couple of ideas that he thinks would be helpful as well. You know, but this money thing is an interesting question. And again, across most of the races we've talked about tonight, there's a varied kind of distribution of how money has acted in each of these races. So in Congressional District 6, we've got two candidates who don't live in the district, both self-funded multimillionaires, right? With a lot of attack ads that are a little bit confusing, pretty vague, a little bit right, a little bit wrong, as we were talking about. But then you also have other candidates who some are taking public matching funds and others are not. Some are taking PAC money and some are not. And there's some different reasonings and motivations for that. But I think from a theoretical perspective, if we want to talk about money in politics, one of the things that we usually end up talking right away about is PAC money, third-party influence. And again, we mentioned earlier, self-funded candidates is one of the options of getting around the influence of third-party spending if you're a voter who believes in that. But there's kind of multiple facets to this problem because, on the other hand, with a self-funded candidate, there are just other issues that might arise in that case, too.
McClain Delaney is speaking right now. Let's listen.
But I couldn't do it without Team Maryland and so many of you in the room. So I just have to say a couple of thank yous that are so important to me right now. And as I was traveling around from, you know, it was April showers today, of course, and it was a downpour. But there were so many people at all of those polling stations that were out there because they care about our country, they care about this state, and they care about lifting up for others. So first I have to say thank you to all of those people on my campaign team. I see them all here. They were there in the rain. They were all day long talking to the voters and out there. And my whole campaign team that has been tirelessly working for the past 6 months. I would not be able to do it without them. And thank you, particularly Susan Kennedy and Nick London. And I have to say to my official team on Capitol Hill and in Frederick, thank you so much. And Kaylee, wherever you are, thank you so much. And the whole, and Aniston. Thank you to my dear husband, John Delaney, who is also a 3-term.
All right, you've been listening to April McClain Delaney. Our coverage doesn't end here, but our time with our experts does. And so we are so grateful to both of you for being here tonight, for your insight, your intellect, and your heart.
You made us smarter. Thank you for streaming here with us on the free WUSA 9 app.
We'll be back in 3 minutes.
Can we have air now?
I do.
Hi.
WUSA 9 News starts now.
And the news at 11 begins with Maryland's primary election. Polls closed at 8 o'clock tonight, and since then, the results have just been rolling on in. Thank you for staying up with us. I'm Lorenzo Hall.
And I'm Leslie Foster. The results tonight are setting the stage for the general election in November. There are dozens of statewide, federal, and local races on the ballot. Some of those races are already called.
Yeah, and tonight we have team coverage all over Maryland to give you the results as they roll in. That includes the very crowded congressional race for Maryland's 5th District. Adrian Boafo is the declared winner for the Democratic nomination there. This race is to take over for Congressman Steny Hoyer, who is retiring.
Now, this is one of the most highly contested races in today's primary. Our Randy Hildreth is live at the campaign party in Lanham. And Randy, we just heard from Adrian Boafo about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, good evening to you both. The party is still going on here. You can hear the music in the background. People are still here enjoying this moment. The race was called by the Associated Press a little bit before 10 p.m. And as you mentioned, we heard from Adrian Boafo speaking to a crowded room of his supporters as excitement, but also saying the work is just beginning. The work is not done here. In terms of who else we heard from tonight, local union representatives also spoke, representing the education sector, also local union leaders representing electricians. They called him a champion for the working people. And we also heard from Representative Steny Hoyer talking about it being time to pass the torch to the next generation. And early on, he endorsed Adrian Boafo. Boafo had worked for his campaign, and tonight he said he felt like the best hands to pass that torch to, the best person to fill his shoes, would be Adrian Boafo. Again, heard from Adrian Boafo tonight. Here's a little bit of what he had to tell supporters about this moment and what it has meant for him and his family.
Steny and I are both the sons of immigrants. We grew up believing in America that drew our parents from across the sea. An America where hard work and responsibility are the keys to every door. An America knowing where possibility has no ceiling.
He talks about his family immigrating to the United States from Ghana and made that connection about his background and Representative Hoyer. Now, in terms of next steps, obviously all eyes on November. He talked about having a conversation with his opponent, Harry Dunn, before coming out and addressing his supporters here, and says over the next course of the couple of months, he will be reaching out to other candidates. We know it was a very crowded Democratic field, but wants to work with other candidates as they look ahead to November and in their push to get to Capitol Hill. I'll send it back to you. Live tonight, Randy Hildreth, WUSA 9.
Yeah, a lot of excitement there and a lot of excitement all the way around tonight.
A lot of work to be done, that's for sure. Randy, thank you.
We can also tell you on the Republican side, Chris Chafee is the declared winner for now, District 5 Republican race.
All right, former U.S. Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn came up short in his campaign to represent District 5 in the U.S. House. He thanked his supporters tonight in Anne Arundel County.
So many people, when they see me, the first thing they say is thank you for your service. And I always respond with a thank you, because I don't think people realize the big impact that they have in me, motivating me to keep going.
And the 6th District has become one of the most expensive races in the country. And right now, McClain Delaney is in the lead.
Yeah, you can see with 44% of the votes there. Katie Lusso is live at her campaign watch party in Gaithersburg. So, Katie, clearly the party continues.
The party definitely continues and people are up. I can tell you that McClain Delaney, she just spoke to the crowd and they were cheering her on as she came through the doors. It's still close, right? But she said she is hopeful, she is really confident that she is going to win this. I want to show you where she is right now. She is surrounded by people over there. They are all really excited to see her in the room and to hear from her. I want to mention a few of the things she said. She called this, if she does in fact win, the first step in flipping the House. She said this is about so much more than those attack ads that you have seen on TV. She said this is about caring about the state, and she made mention, of all of the endorsements that she has received. When we're talking about those endorsements, Governor Wes Moore, Senator Jamie Raskin, Angela Alsobrook. So a lot of those big name endorsements that she received, she said that really shows the teamwork that Maryland is. She said this is about lifting up others. She also thanked her campaign staff. She thanked her husband, her her daughters, and really she focused in on the people of Maryland, thanking them, saying that what happens here in Maryland is really representative of what happens across the country. And lastly, she also mentioned how in Maryland, the issues here, they come with an unbelievable challenge, she said, but also an unbelievable blessing. And she is so excited and hopeful to have her seat beyond the year and a half that she has held it. So she is holding out hope. I believe we have some of her speech to play for you. So if we can, let's take a listen to that.
The votes are still coming in. We won early votes so far. We vote mail-in votes so far. And election day so far. So this is a great step. I'm very enthusiastic. We will see where it goes, but I'm feeling good. And
So again, you heard her saying she is feeling good. She is confident in there. She is still over there surrounded by people on camera. So we're going to get off here and go try and talk to her and see if we can get a little more insight on what comes next for her. Leslie and Lorenzo, back to you.
Yeah, everybody's watching to see what's going to happen here. She's still ahead, but this race has not been declared just yet. All right, Katie, thank you. So 6th Congressional District candidate David Trone is trailing April McClain Delaney.
Yeah, our John Duran is live at his campaign watch party in Frederick tonight. So, John, quite a different mood there compared to McClain Delaney. So what are you hearing from his supporters?
Well, Lorenzo, we haven't seen or heard from David Trone yet tonight. No word on if or when he will speak. We are at his party right now. The crowd thinning out a little bit at 11 o'clock, but they are sticking around hopefully to hear from the candidate they support. Maybe a turnaround in the results, as we have told you. April McClain Delaney holding that slight lead right now, but not claiming victory. The former 3-term congressman and Total Wine and More co-owner trying to win the massive first 6th district that's spanning parts of deep blue suburban Montgomery County and Democrat-leaning Frederick County, all the way through the more conservative rural western panhandle of the state. We caught up with David Trone at a polling location this afternoon, and he told us what's at stake today is taking the fight to President Trump and MAGA Republicans, and he told us he feels he can do it better than the incumbent, April McClain Delaney.
Not as well as I would. I've never lost a general because I cut across party lines, and folks respect the fact that you're a businessman, that you're self-made, and created a company across the United States. And so we always get some independents like crazy. And that's one thing this system needs in Maryland is a primary system that's actually open so independents can actually vote, because they're totally disenfranchised, right now in Maryland. And that's wrong.
And Leslie, Lorenzo, I have to mention the massive amounts of dollars that have been spent by these candidates on their campaigns. A combined $32 million self-funded. That's one of the most expensive primary races in the country. David Trone spending, out of that total, $25 million of his own dollars in a bid to win the congressional seat he held for 3 terms before 2024 when he ran for Senate. Again, Leslie, Lorenzo, we are waiting to see or hear from David Trone tonight, and we will bring it to you if he does.
So much money.
So much money, and quite fascinating. We haven't seen or heard from him yet.
That is really fascinating. Okay. All right, John, you keep an eye out. If you see him, let us know.
All right, now we should also point out on the Republican side, real estate broker Robin Ficker is leading the race with around 43% of the vote so far. All right, so we learned the results for the primary race for governor earlier this evening. Only 16 minutes after polls closed, the Associated Press called Maryland Governor Wes Moore the Democratic nominee. Moore is running for re-election, although there is some speculation that he has his eyes on a presidential campaign. He was running against Eric Felber, whom you see right there, a physician and medical clinic owner.
On the Republican side, Dan Cox was declared the winner. The attorney was the Republican Party's nominee back in 2022. And he lost to Governor Wes Moore in the general election. The Associated Press declared County Executive Aisha Braveboy as the overwhelming favorite to hold on to her seat in Prince George's County right now. She's got more than 71% of the vote. The former state's attorney originally won the seat in a special election last year after Angela Alsobrooks left for the U.S. Senate. And this is what she had to say during her campaign party tonight.
I know everyone's tired, but we have a little burst of energy, right, just so that we can celebrate with each other. And I consider this not a victory solely for me, but really a victory for this county. A victory for the diversity of this county. You know, I am the daughter of an immigrant.
All right, so another race we have been watching right now. It's still a very close race for the county executive position in Montgomery County, but you can see at-large council member Will Jawando pulling away a bit against Andrew Friedson, who represents District 1 of the council. But for a good chunk of the night, they were neck and neck.
Yeah, our Eric Flack is live at Will Jawando's campaign event in Silver Spring. When we checked in with you, they were at about 37 or 38%. There was only 100 votes between the two of them. And it appears Will Jawando has taken off a bit.
Yeah. The latest check I saw, Leslie, was Will Jawando, council member from Montgomery County, about 5,000 votes ahead with a high percentage already reporting. In fact, he's on the stage behind me addressing his supporters. He told them we are not done yet, but we are excited about where we are. He thanked the crowd and his supporters. He said this room is all about Montgomery County. He talked about how his campaign was a grassroots campaign. He says they knocked on 50,000 doors. They had 4,000 small donors. He said that's the type of support you want in a race as close as this. Here's what he said just a few moments ago.
When I look around this room, and even with all the bright lights, I want you guys to look at each other too, because this is a beautiful room. This is Montgomery County. This is Montgomery County. Every race, every age, every ethnicity, every part of the county, that's what this room represents. And you're the people who helped us knock doors. You made calls. You carried this race with me and with us when it was heavy, when they were attacking us with millions of dollars. This room is not just campaign, staff, and volunteers. This is what a movement looks like. Most of the people who raise their kids, most of the people who want to bury their dead.
Councilmember Jawando told this crowd there are still votes to count. He is not claiming victory. He is claiming positivity as he looks ahead to the future of Montgomery County, a county that is facing a critical time in its juncture. Budget problems, a proposed tax increase, school funding issues, all of those may fall to the man behind me to lead this county into the next 10 to 15 years. As of right now, Councilmember Will Jawando holding a lead in this race for Montgomery County Executive. Leslie, Lorenzo, back to you.
We'll see if he can stay to keep that hold. What he has so far, we'll have to just watch and see as this race is changing by the hour.
All right, Flack, thank you.
On the Republican side, Esther Wells is leading the race against Shelley Skolnick. The current county executive, Mark Elrich, cannot run again because of term limits. All right, Matt Gregory has been tracking the races already called tonight, including how the vote broke down county by county.
Yeah, he joins us live now in the studio with a closer look at some of the results. Matt.
Guys, it's important to remember that in this primary, Republicans are actually at a deficit by 2-1. There are two Democrats for every one Republican in the state of Maryland. So people winning tonight, those Democrats will likely carry in November. So when we come to the Adrian Boafo race, he wins with only 31% of the vote, but he took all of these counties from Anne Arundel County to Prince George's down to Charles and over to Calvert and St. Mary's. If we bounce over to the 6th district race, which we're still waiting to call, McClain Delaney's lead is growing, but it's still quite small here. But you'll see she's doing well in Garrett County and she's doing very well in Frederick County as well. But what I want to talk about is how Governor Moore will face a rematch with Dan Cox coming up in November. Now, Dan Cox lost by 32% of the vote back in 2022. He has won today, and that means that he will again face Governor Wes Moore. So will he in November see a similar style shellacking, or will he grow his votes from 4 years ago? We'll have to see.
Changes his approach. We're going to be watching. Matt, thank you. And WUSA 9 is your home for election results. After this newscast, you can get the updated results on our free WUSA 9 app. You can also tune in to WUSA 9 mornings starting at 4:30. They're going to be live until 10 a.m. on our free WUSA 9 app. All right, Top, what are you tracking for us tonight?
Okay, we're going to jump ahead to Friday because heat comes back, humidity comes back. This is Futurecast at 3 o'clock. See the big thunderstorms? We'll come back and talk more about storms on Friday if you have to change your plans. We'll also come back. You might be surprised how cool it starts tomorrow morning.
Right now, all lanes are back open on Route 50 in Prince George's County. The major highway was shut down in both directions near Lanham for more than 5 hours after a man in distress climbed into a bridge at around 3 this afternoon. Well, just after 8:30 tonight, police said the man was brought down safely, thankfully. The closure also impacted voting. A polling place was right next to the scene. Dozens of voters who couldn't make it to that exact polling location because of the road closures were redirected to the Prince George's County Board of Elections to cast provisional ballots.
Voters in New York also cast ballots today. Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez easily won her race. Now, this was with, 85% of the vote, more than that. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani was not on any ballot, but he put his political clout to the test by formally endorsing 3 fellow progressive Democrats in competitive House races. Tonight, all 3 of those candidates won their primaries.
The Washington Wizards have made history selecting A.J. DeBonsa as the #1 overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft. I go one-on-one with the star wing coming up.